Welcome to the January 18th meeting of the Conejo Recreation and Park District. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask Rochelle to please lead us in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Rochelle. Appreciated that. Roll call, please. Here.
Director Nichols.
Yes.
Director Huffer.
Yes.
Director Cussworth.
Yes.
Director Buss.
Yes.
We have a quorum. We're moving on to item 3, special presentations, Conejo Community Center and Outdoor Unit, Conejo Valley Unified School District Partnerships. Staff, please.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Juliette Morales, and I'm the Recreation Supervisor of the Conejo Community Center and Outdoor Unit. And this is Kellen McPherson. He is the Recreation Coordinator of our unit as well. And we are going to be presenting on CVUSD partnerships with the Conejo Community Center and Outdoor Unit specifically.
So tonight we'll be presenting on a number of our partnerships. We'll start with our after-school enrichment programs, and then we'll move into our physical education assistance programs that just started recently. Then we'll move into our recess structured play, our play and learn at the park field trips through our outdoor unit. And then finally, we will touch on our use of CVUSD campuses for our little folks summer day camp. So we have two sorts of after-school enrichment programs. This represents our traditional after-school enrichment programs that are run by our 4 main community centers. We split up all the elementary schools in CVUSD. These just happen to be the 4 schools that we work with at the Conejo Center. That includes Acacia, Aspen, Madronia, and Westlake Hills Elementary. So these programs begin 10 minutes after school lets out, and they run for an hour. They're a nice standardized time to give parents that extra hour of care after a school day, as well as kids a little bit of fun after a long day. We're very excited to be offering some new programs this upcoming session, including our cardboard creations on Thursdays at Aspen with a new instructor, and our capoeira program at Acacia, which we're very excited about, which if you don't know, it's a Brazilian martial arts that includes dancing and martial arts all in one.
So to start out with our after school care, starting in 2022, we have an after school program that consistently takes place at Acacia Elementary, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But with the ELOP program, if you're not aware, it's also known as ELOP. This is a grant that basically funds the schools to provide after school care for children that are considered in need. And they may not be able to afford childcare normally on a day-to-day basis. So in the last year, we worked with 2 elementary schools, specifically Westlake Hills and Acacia Elementary, to partner up with them and basically assist in offering this childcare. It started with Westlake Hills Elementary. So the program started specifically on November 18th, 2022. Basically what we did is we provided childcare services on Fridays, every Friday, at Westlake Hills Elementary, and that consisted of 30 to 50 students each Friday. We would basically facilitate any recreational program. So arts and crafts, soccer, basketball, you name it, we did it. And we worked closely with the school administration to track all of the attendance and just to make sure that the kids were enjoying the program. We also reached out to them regarding feedback, making sure that we were meeting their expectations of the program as well. So Acacia got a whiff of that, and we already had a program taking place at Acacia. So just a little bit of a background, we already had the Safe Passage program, which Tim Hagel is heavily a part of. He obviously runs Safe Passage, and we work with him to run a program Monday through Friday for 25 to 30 students on a day-to-day basis. Again, facilitating recreational programming, we offered tutoring and homework assistance for those students, but at the same time, ELOP was taking place. In fall of last year, or 2 years ago in 2022, there was a minimum day week, and Acacia reached out to our administration regarding assistance for the program. They didn't have enough staff to run the ELOP program during that week. So we staffed it for them. We had 50 students every single day, and we facilitated recreational programming for them and offered homework assistance and tutoring during that week. And the program hours were 1 to 6, just as we've had in place with Safe Passage 1 to 6 as well. That partnership was really successful, and they ended up reaching out to our administration again because we had both programs running simultaneously. Why don't we just combine both programs together? It made more sense. The kids were intermingling anyways. The children that were enrolled in the ELOP program were coming to our program and wanting to play with our staff because our staff are really awesome and engaging. And we ended up signing a contract with them. And in January of 2023, the marriage of both programs started. And during that time, we facilitated the recreational component, and we partnered with their teachers, and I'll get into more of that in the next slide. So our role during that time was facilitating the recreational activities because that's what we specialize in, the fun part, right? So we every day we would split the kids up into 2 groups: primary, which is TK to 2, and upper 3 to 5. And basically during that split, the half of the kids would go with the CVUSD teachers, the credentialed teachers, and they would get homework assistance, reading assistance, math activities, tutoring. It's a fantastic partnership. And then we would have the other half of the kids doing recreational based activities that were catered to that age group. And so that took place Monday through Thursday. And then on Fridays, part of that agreement was we would take those children and bring them to Conejo Community Park. It's a very short walk from Acacia Elementary. And we would take all 50 kids, walk them over, and Tim Hagel, who graciously would fund the program, would allow us to basically book specialists. So a lot of benefits have come from this partnership. We've seen increased engagement with these students. They want to be in the program. They look forward to seeing our staff. We have increased outreach. We went from serving 25 to 30 kids maybe on a daily basis to now 50 to 65. We have enhanced tutoring and homework assistance because we have credentialed teachers that are providing that assistance on their end. We've implemented specialists, face painters, ceramics, robotics, and so much more that we've done on those fun Fridays when they come to our community center and park. We've also included them into special events such as the Dia de los Muertos event that took place for the first time last year. We were able to get the ELOP kids to attend that event, as well as the Harvest Festival at McCrae Ranch, which we also oversee. And we've increased the growth of CVUSD relationships. Other schools that we currently work with have heard about our work with Acacia and Westlake Hills, and they've been asking us to have more of a presence at their school sites. We have a little clip.
Alrighty, the kids wanted to give their input as well. So on to our physical education assistance programs. Back in the month of October, Aspen Elementary came to us with 2 problems that they were looking to address. One of those being the physical education for their TK and kindergarten students. As it stands, their physical education was about 30 minutes per week with their regular teachers. Aspen felt that time could be better served for their teachers doing other work, so they came to CRPD to try and supplement. With that in mind, we send 1 staff member there every Tuesday from 8:30 to 10:30, where she works with 3 classes over that time of about 25 kids each, and she gets to work with 75 kids each week there. And the whole point is to learn fundamentals mainly through fun and games. So they're learning the importance of stretching, they're learning how to catch, how to throw, and ultimately just how to kind of cooperate in that kind of a classroom. And in order to bolster our own efforts, we are using the Spark Physical Education curriculum, which relies on fun and a progressive nature to keep kids engaged in their physical activity. That program was so successful that Madronia Elementary School caught wind of it, and they had their own physical education needs that needed to be met. They had an assistant physical education teacher that was going to be out for about 2 to 3 months on leave, and they needed someone to come in and bolster their program. Rather than hiring out for a few months, they decided to contract with CRPD to fill that need. So we have been sending a staff member every Tuesday and Thursday from about 9:05 to 2:35. So pretty much the whole school day there, where she works with 7 classes throughout the day, which totals to about 200 students from 1st through 5th grade. So in this case, she's just the assistant teacher, but we've received excellent feedback from that program. The staff have told us she's really been helping keep the kids in line. As you can see there, the kids really respond to her at that program. The other issue that Aspen came to us hoping to address, and their primary issue was they had seen a rise in arguments and just general misbehaviors during recess as kids were trying to play games together. They couldn't come to an agreement on rules and how the game should be playing. So their idea was to have us provide some structured play and enforce rules for certain games at recess. The PTA came to us with this request and is the one funding it in order to help the kids get along and in order to just reinforce the concepts of sportsmanship, cooperation, getting along during recess. So with that in mind, we have staff present at Aspen twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays from about 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And participation is completely optional for this program, which I think is really important because it means those kids that are there are really willing and wanting to be a part of it, wanting to engage. And at first, it was a little bit slow going. The kids were a little apprehensive, but we've seen an increase each week. And now we're receiving consistently about 10 to 20 students per recess, which is great. And we've heard really great feedback, not only from our staff on the days that they're there, that the kids are really having a great time and really getting along better. But Aspen staff has also told us that even on the days that our staff are not present, they have been able to put into action what they've been learning from our staff, maintaining rules more consistently and just generally having a better time getting along. And again, kind of a similar situation to the physical education. Madronia got wind of this and thought it would be a great idea to implement there. So we're also going to be working with their PTA. We just began that yesterday. In fact, we started our first day there. So we'll be with them, Aspen and Madronia, through the rest of the school year running these. And finally, we have our play and learn at the park outdoor unit field trips here, which are super exciting. They actually, it was actually an idea from our very own board member, Nellie Cussworth here, to try and help the 3rd grade students get their outdoor education in a fun, exciting way that's not in a classroom. So for these field trips, we run them at parks that neighbor local elementary schools. So they're able to just walk right over to the park and have their field trip. We provide 3 activities. We provide a Conejo Valley ecosystem animal tracking game that's run through, or presentation, excuse me, that's run through our staff. The food chain game, which is the Conejo Center and outdoor unit staff as well. And then we've also partnered with the Casca Park Rangers to run a mountain lion education thing, which the kids just love being a part of. They get all that amazing background information there. And so these field trips satisfied California state standards for 3rd grade outdoor education in that fun, exciting way. And we're able to accommodate about 90 to 100 students per field trip. We're excited to work with 3 schools this year. Banyan, Glenwood, and Wildwood have all signed up to have some field trips this year.
And our last form of the partnership with CVUSD is our Little Folks Summer Day Camp. So our unit oversees 5 all-day summer day camps throughout the park district. And one of those locations is typically a CVUSD school site. So each year we partner with CVUSD to host our Little Folks Day Camp, which is Monday through Friday. Staff get there they're there at 6:30 in the morning to 6 o'clock at night. We have 60 to 70 campers on a daily basis, and we utilize a CVUSD school site for the childcare rooms. It's really important that for this age group, because they're ages 4 to 7, this is their first summer day camp that they're attending. And for parents, especially, dropping them off is a big deal. You know, they're away from their child all day long. So it's really important that we use a CVUSD school site because it has an extra layer of safety. We don't have members of the public just randomly walking onto the school site like our other park locations have. So it's an extra layer of safety for the kids, and it makes parents feel, you know, more comfortable dropping their kids off at camp. What's also nice with the partnership too is CVUSD allows us to have specialists on site and an obstacle course, inflatable obstacle courses for the children to enjoy. And we upkeep the rooms. Our staff are responsible for cleaning and maintaining the childcare rooms and the restrooms that are there. We leave it better than we found it. So past school sites we've used are Wildwood, Aspen, and Wildwood of last year. And we're still in the work in progress of what school site we'll be using this upcoming 2024, summer 2024. So just as a quick recap, we have many programs that we offer at various school locations for the Park and Learn program, for the ELOP program, after school enrichment classes, physical education, and so much more. And we're hoping that we'll be able to increase these partnerships over the next coming years as we are becoming more involved at these CVUSD locations. And does anybody have any questions? That concludes our presentation.
First of all, great report, a lot of good information. I'm going to start to my right. Mr. Chuck Cuffer.
All I can say is, wow, you guys are doing an awful lot, and it's so terrific to see all these schools and the children that you're helping out with these programs. It's great. I did wonder who is providing the funding for these programs?
So it depends on the program. So for all of our after school enrichment classes, those are all contract led for the most part. So based on registration, that's how the funding goes for those classes. So it's really based on registration. If we have a high registration, those classes are running at the 4 locations that we work with. With the ELOP program specifically, the school district is funding that program in partnership with Tim Hagel and Safe Passage.
Okay.
And for the recess and the recess and the PE programs, it depends on the location. Aspen's PTA is also funding some of those programs, and same thing with Madronia.
Okay, but it is outside funding. It's not something that.
Correct.
Great. I think there were a couple of the after school programs. You said the hours were 1 to 5. I haven't had a child in elementary school for a long, long time, but I thought they were in school later than 1 o'clock.
They have some minimum days, so it encompasses the minimum days as well. And we have the TK students get out around 1 day daily. So we do take TK all the way up to 5th grade. Normally our TK students are there around 1:15 they get with our staff. And then the other kids, the kiddos are not out until about 2:35. So we have an hour where it's just the TK kids, but we do provide care from 1 to 6
Okay.
daily. Yeah.
And then my last question, you're talking about a couple of the playground programs, and I'm just wondering, do you issue whistles to the staff people who are working the playground to sort of keep them in line, or?
No whistles, just kind, friendly faces that get the kids drawn in.
Thank you for the questions, Mr. Huffer. Director Nellie Kessworth.
I really loved your graphics. It was a really nice presentation.
Thank you.
So thank you for that, keeping us all entertained. So it's just the schools that you mentioned that you're working with. At the beginning of the program, you said these are just the schools that the Conejo community is working with. Are the other centers working with other schools?
Yeah.
Or
They're divided between the 4 centers, Orchard, Dos Vientos, and Thousand Oaks, and we all take 4 to 5 schools depending on whether they want to participate in after-school programs or not. So they're divided between the 4. Those are just the 4 that are actively participating with us. We also man Glenwood, but they've opted to not provide or not have after-school programs for the time being.
so do you know how many schools in all we're providing programs for?
I believe it's 14.
14 schools.
Yes.
That's pretty impressive. And so I was impressed with the Sparks, the school that I worked at. Now I'm in the past tense. We use the Sparks program. We contracted with someone who ran that excellent program. But she would have about 75 kids, but she had 3 helpers. So you have one teacher with 75 kids?
So for the PE program, Jaden, who is the staff that's leading that at Aspen Elementary, she has 1 class size at a time, which is usually between 25 to 30 students.
Oh, okay. They're
But
not.
there-
all ones.
Yeah, and there is another adult out there for our ratio because we operate at a 1 to 15 ratio for safety reasons.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad I clarified that because we take out like the entire 1st grade. So when you said the 75, I thought, wow, that's a lot of kids for one person. So, all right. So they're just doing it class by class is how they're doing it. Yeah. Fabulous program. Love Sparks. Okay, I guess that's it, but thank you. You know, it really makes you feel good when you see the community cooperating and doing what's right for the kids and having safe passage in there too as part of our group. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cusworth, and thank you for your input to the program. It sounds like they appreciated your suggestion. Okay, to the far left, Director Buss.
Hi, so my little ones go to Acacia. Well, just one little one. My older one graduated to Sequoia, but I love this. And then we also were at Madronia as that's our home school. And I was on the PTA and heavily involved there. So I love the fact that you guys are doing the PE because that was always such a struggle. So you're doing it for Madronia, and I was wondering, because I could imagine that the other schools are having the similar issues with finding staffing for the PE position. How are you guys, or I guess maybe this is more Rochelle, but how are you getting that information out that you're offering those services to the schools?
So as far as basically what ended up happening with Aspen is we had a meeting because they requested the recess program originally. We did the recess program years ago with different school sites. And when we were talking with them and they had mentioned physical education, I used to teach PE back in the day. And so I was curious, and that kind of sparked the conversation. And then we both were chiming in about how because our staff are amazing and we couldn't do it without them. And they said that they had a need for their TK and K group, and we offered to facilitate it to help with the credentialed teachers. I'm not sure what the need is at the different school locations, but I do know that they're communicating because we had a meeting this afternoon and Borchard was, I think, contacted by a different school site that was actually inquiring because of our work at Madronia and Aspen. So
Yeah.
it's just a lot of talking from the school sites.
Yeah, because those are great programs, because that was a huge thing. And then I love the structured recess because I get a debrief every evening from my 9-year-old about everything that happens. And so I think it's great that there are younger faces to engage them, because there's definitely sometimes some boredom, and I can see how that leads to conflict with these small children. So the other thing was the field trips, because when I was on PTA, that was another thing that we would pay for and try and figure out what we were going to do. So I love these the play and learn at the park. So is that then broadcasted out to the whole Conejo Valley elementary schools so that they can participate?
Yeah, so the original concept of that was that it would be at our park locations for the schools that are immediately next to them. So that's kind of where we're starting now. And then as it continues to grow, we can always start branching out to schools and see if they want them on campus. But the idea is they get off campus for a little bit. It just happens to be close and local, that they don't need a bus, things like that. But there's certainly room for expansion in it.
Yeah, no, those are great. That's awesome. And then I have to tell you that my girlfriends all love the little folks camp. So you guys are doing an awesome job.
Good.
So
Yeah.
thank
That's
you
good
so
to hear.
much.
Thank you, Director Buss. Director Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had no idea how effective our park district staff were in taking over the school district. So don't let any of these trustees hear about this. But it will also be a great presentation to the trustee board if they would have you. But this is a great idea. And I do remember when there was that assistance for recess, a couple of years ago. But to see how this is kind of refined and evolved is fantastic. And, especially the incorporating of the educational components, where you can do that little handoff. I think that's great. And I do remember when Mrs. Cusworth, the teacher, suggested this program, but I thought it was fun inside of her classroom too, and she didn't have to push them outside to have fun. But it sounds like it's working well to have this kind of a cooperative arrangement inside and outside. But yeah, thanks for the update. Like I said, all I knew is that at one point we had done this recess, but now it's really blossomed. So thank you for the update and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Nichols. Towards the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned schools and parks that are adjacent or close. How many of our parks fall into that category with Conejo Valley Unified School District?
So we'll be working with the 3, Glenwood, Banyan, and Wildwood. Westlake Hills also borders a park. believe that was those were the four we had discussions with, and Westlake Hills was going another route for their outdoor education this year. So I believe it's just those four.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there might be a fifth one that's not involved in the program.
Westlake Hills is the fourth in that. We're working with three this year: Glenwood, Banyan, and Wildwood.
Okay. And I heard the program Sparks has been around for a while.
I don't know, we've had it at our school for several years, and it was the best PE program we ever had. We had a whole teacher development on it when, our PE person started it, so I don't know how long it's been around, but it's an excellent program, and it was saying, fantastic.
That sounds good. So how did we get involved? Whom researched it and put it into action?
So it's funny because when I was a teacher with the Newhall School District in the city of Santa Clarita, I was trained on Spark curriculum, and it's basically all inclusive. The idea is to make it equitable and inclusive for all children to enjoy. That includes children that may have disabilities or limitations that make it difficult to participate in different physical activities. So we were trained on how to utilize that Spark curriculum. So as soon as we had the conversations with Aspen, I ended up purchasing the curriculum, and it can be used, it's diverse. I mean, we can use it even for our camp activities. It's incredible. And the staff have given us a lot of really wonderful feedback regarding the curriculum, and it's extremely adaptable for all ages, from TK all the way to fifth.
That's great, and appreciate your keeping your eyes and ears open and bringing some of your previous experience to CRPD. It's already bringing a lot of positive activities and programs, so we appreciate. Board members, any other questions or comments come to mind? Well, again, thank you for a great presentation, and continue with the great work you've got going. And good luck with the other schools and so forth you're working with.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on to item 4, items from the public. I don't believe this. I have one card.
8 people on Zoom.
8
We have 8 on Zoom. One wants to discuss pickleball, but
and one what?
one wants to discuss pickleball, but does not want to wait to the item and is asking to be heard during the public comment period.
Yeah, correct my statement. I now have 4 speaker cards and 1 comment statement card. And we also have participants online who would like to make comments during the public comment period. Now, should we go ahead and those people in person wait until we address item 8E, or should we take them now as a speaker?
Has 9A, so they.
9A, excuse me.
They want to talk 9A.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think if anyone wants to speak on 9A, it's literally a couple minutes away. So I think we should wait for 9A. But if anyone has something that other than 9A, other than pickleball, and has a public comment, we can certainly take that now.
Agenda item 13.
Looks like this man has his hand up.
Melissa says that there's one for public comments online.
Right.
Okay.
But then here's one for 13 under public comments, so. Okay, that is a different topic.
Okay.
So at this time, does the individual who's online want to speak at this time during public comments, or wait until the item is on the agenda?
Okay.
So why don't we go ahead and take that individual at this time? And then that person can go about their business after they make the comment. And who is that individual? Okay, are they online?
Happy New Year. It's Claudia Bill de la Peña, but since Mr. Friedel said it will be 2 minutes before the item is called, I can wait 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay,
Well,
you.
then this was another public comment.
item 13.
Okay. What's 13? Oh, you want to wait till the end? Okay.
Okay. A second correction, we now have 8 speaker cards. And then the one online, Claudia Bill de la Peña. I'm gonna go over some general rules. We do have speaker cards. And anyone who wants to speak on Zoom, please raise your hand by using, boy, they're coming left and right.
Yeah, and why don't we knock out the approval of the agenda and the consent? We haven't done that yet.
Yeah, okay,
So knock those out and then we'll get to not.
okay. We're skipping item 4, items from the public, not skipping it, we're passing it. Item 5, approval of the agenda. I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Any corrections, questions, comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, hearing none, that motion passes. We're moving on to item 7, deferred matters. We have none this evening.
But consent 6, number 6, consent.
Oh, George. Okay. Item 6, consent, 6A and B, consent calendar, approval of the minutes of January 4th. And item B, approval of the warrants. And item C, confirmation of board appointments and assignments. Any comments or questions? If not, approval of the consent calendar, A, B, and C.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
You have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Any other comments or questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, hearing none, that motion will pass. Item 7, deferred matters, as indicated, we have no deferred matters this evening. Item 8, items for discussion. And as we know, item 8A,
Not
up-
9.
oh, man. Item 9, new items. 9A, authorized trial pickleball court locations in Conejo Recreation and Park District. And I was going over briefly the guidelines for a number of speakers so you can be prepared. All speakers in person will be heard first, then those on Zoom, although we have one change with Claudia Bill de la Peña. And you will all be allowed 3 minutes as individuals, and if you're representing a group, you'll have 5 minutes. And when it's your turn to speak, please go to the podium, state your name if desired, and your city of residence. At this time, I'd like to have staff make a presentation.
Thank you, Chair Lang, members of the board. So we're here tonight for the purpose of further reviewing the pickleball courts in the Conejo Valley at CRPD District Properties. I'm going to go into a bit of a background, kind of how we got to where we are today, just because it's been a multi-year process with the review of pickleball courts. And thank you. And so to kind of just kick off a little bit, just background of the process. Back in spring of 2021, we had interest from the public during our budget process about where and how can we get more pickleball courts. And so based off of that, back in spring of 21, staff took a recommendation item to form a pickleball ad hoc committee in July of 2021. So a few months later, we formed a committee. And then from 2021 to 2022, we met with the committee over the course of a year plus. We reviewed properties, we assessed, and from that, we developed an analysis, a stepped analysis of 3 stages. And with that, We started with 19 courts. Those 19 courts were discussed in the item taken to the overall board in July of 2021. We had 19 locations, and staff directed that based on the availability at those sites based on what kind of park sites they are. So we have a hierarchy of our park system. We have district-wide courts, we have community park courts, or sorry, the district-wide parks, district-wide parks, community parks, play fields, as well as neighborhood parks, and then special facilities. And so based on looking at the use of pickleball courts, we looked at sites that had off-street parking. We looked at sites that had restrooms. We looked at properties that would fit the size of pickleball courts if we added, or I think it was roughly about an acre of development to those park sites. And so staff took to the board 19 sites at that time. Then from the committee, we took that from 19 sites down to 10 sites. And we looked at use, whether if adding a new pickleball facility would affect the existing use, as well as have impacts on the existing footprint, neighborhood, and such. And so then we got down to the next level of analysis that further looked at, from a programming standpoint, of offset of permits that were done at the property, as well as other uses at the property in more detail. And then we actually did outreach that brought down from the 10, we got down to 5. And so we looked at those 5 sites, and we took those 5 sites out to the public and did a series of neighborhood meetings there. And that was in the summer of 22. And so from those 5 sites, we took a board item in November 22, and the board approved prioritizing those 5 sites. And then that staff would be bringing those sites, incorporating those sites into our capital improvement plan in our next budget cycle, which was in the spring or June of 2023 is when the capital improvement plan was approved by the board as part of our budget. And so we actually had those 5 sites there. Our capital improvement plan is only funded for years 1 and 2. Years 3 through 9 are budgeted and balanced. So if we had the monies available based on the plan, we can execute that work. And year 10 was unfunded, however planned. So again, years 1 and 2 are only budgeted. That's the only monies we have to execute the work would be in the first 2 years. There's 3 park sites that were put in year 3. And so those sites, in no particular order, are Triumpho, Oak Brook Neighborhood Park, and Del Prado Playfield. And that was again in year 3. In year 10, we had undeveloped park site, Conejo Creek Northwest, as well as, I'm totally blanking, as a Rancho Conejo Playfield. Sorry about that. And so taking a look at those sites, going through the budget process, the pickleball community was interested again of, hey, where are our courts? What are we doing about our courts? And so as part of our operational budget, we have funding that was approved by the board back in, again, June of 2023, that would allow us to take a closer look at those properties. And so staff met with the ad hoc committee, I believe in September of 23. And we were taking a look at what's our next step? How can we kind of take a look at this? And we discussed trial courts or like pilot program test courts during the budget process. We discussed it with the ad hoc committee. Hey, let's take a look at trial courts. What properties could we do it at based on hardscape of courts that are available now that wouldn't offset too much use, as well as being available at first those 5 priority sites. As well as we took a look at one additional site that's not prioritized as part of that plan, and that was Estella Park. And so the committee decided to review with neighborhood meetings down to Triumpho, Oak Brook Neighborhood Park, and Estella due to the existing priority on the CIP, but as well as existing courts. Estella being the newcomer to the list. Due to the fact that Estella is actually and we'll kind of get into details of the park site later on in the presentation, but Estella has an existing multi-use court that serves tennis as well as had 2 pickleball courts and has futsal, which is 5-a-side soccer. And so with that, we were looking at where could we add additional courts. Right now, right now Estella only has court stripes, no permanent nets. So you'd have to bring your own net to play there. And so staff thought that was really kind of low hanging fruit of, hey, let's try it out. Let's maybe make pickleball permanent at this location. And so it gives the community another opportunity to have pickleball courts after we go through a trial process and see how it goes, you know, with the neighbors and with the users of the park site. And so with that, we went out to the public and we had those meetings at those 3 sites. And based on those meetings, concerns, we took in some criteria of the trial, how we would like approach that. We had, you know, interest, which we're all familiar with. Hey, pickleball is noisy. It creates a unique, different noise. And so we had interest from the public and park users about the noise, as well as the traffic, and then just more use in their park site. So based on those comments, staff kind of worked through our criteria and what we would like to include in the trial courts. And the report that I'll kind of get into a little bit more detail now was reviewed with the ad hoc committee. We came to a consensus that this was the best step forward to put it in front of the whole board to make a decision if we would like to move forward with this, since this is a board level decision. And so with that, getting kind of in the nuts and bolts of the report tonight is, first off, we always take a look at environmental compliance. And so part of the CEQA compliance, there are exemptions, and in staff's mind, and what we believe is that these work with this project in 2 different classifications. So there's a Class 6 exemption with it, that's basic data collection, research, experimental management, and resource evaluation activities. And so those would be strictly for information gathering purposes. And then it would be part of a study leading to a greater decision by a public agency that it hasn't yet approved, haven't adopted or funded yet. Just like pickleball, we haven't approved. We've approved, take a look at these locations, but we haven't approved actual projects at these sites because we have to further review it. We need to do the outreach like we've been doing at the 3 sites in question. And so there's a exemption in that case, as well as another exemption that falls within it is Class 3 categorical exemption. And that's when you have an existing use or existing structure on a property, you can convert it. And so you could change it, you can convert it to a different use. And so right now, Estella Park, it already has pickleball. We're just making it permanent or trying it out, a permanent net system. Triumpha has existing park amenities with active use in tennis courts, as well as basketball court, baseball, softball field. And so taking a look at that, that would be a conversion of those courts. And then Oak Brook Neighborhood Park has a netball court. So netball isn't in use. It isn't something that the public is raving about. And so staff thought that we had this extra space here and we would offset the netball use and introduce a trial pickleball situation at Oak Brook Neighborhood Park. And so again, we went to those 3 sites. We talked to the neighbors. We heard interest of those issues and concerns of the neighbors. We also had pickleball folks that were interested, whether they're neighbors or in the area, whether they're a mile to a few miles away from each of those park sites or greater. There was interest from the community to provide this. And so with all the input, we put together the report, and we kind of, every project, we take a look at case studies or see what other folks are doing, other municipalities, do some research. And we actually came across a agency up in British Columbia, and they were looking at pickleball courts at existing properties. And they basically did something very similar. What we are proposing tonight is to take a look at those noise levels of what those parks are putting out. And so, and I think I've kind of grazed over this slides a little bit, but so we would be taking a look at those in a little bit more detail of, hey, from a sound monitoring, we'll have an environmental consultant. By no means am I an environmental noise professional. And so we would be leaning on a consultant, outside consultant, to be able to provide some information. And so we kind of took a look at that study, kind of took a look at what we're proposing, and we feel that there are some benefits from having that study, but as well as taking a look at our park properties in more detail, since every park property is different. These 3 park properties are actually very different between each one of them. One of them is more of a suburban, large but neighborhood park. Another one is a smaller, urban neighborhood park that's apartments a few 100 feet away to a single family home 10 feet away. And so really the goal of the proposed trials is to just take a closer look at what those sites would be doing if we did introduce courts, and try to get a baseline of the noise, the traffic, the use that's happening at those park sites. And staff felt from a cost standpoint, rather than going down the road and doing full environmental study saying we are doing we're proposing 6 courts, let's take a look at it, and move forward in the environmental consulting and spend a lot of money. We thought that we could do some good due diligence, however, at a low cost, because we have existing court surfacing that could be utilized, as well as from a cost standpoint, we feel that we can really take a look at each site before we go too far down the road in the development process and the environmental analysis process with that. And so the proposed locations, as we discussed, is Triumph Community Park. It's 23.4 acres. We would be looking at doing 4 pickleball courts at 2 existing tennis courts. So they would be multi-striped. And then at Estella Park, which already has 2 striped courts, we'd be bringing in permanent nets, or movable, but having nets there, not bring your own net from a patron perspective, as well as Oak Brook Neighborhood Park, which is 14 acres. As I discussed, it's 1 netball adjacent to a basketball. Basketball would go untouched, and we would look at converting the netball into 2 pickleball courts. So Triumph Community Park, this is a overview map. This is included as Exhibit A in the report. It has currently 3 lit tennis courts. It has 1 basketball court, 1 baseball, 1 softball, 1 sand volleyball court, 2 parking lots. It has restrooms, playground, trail, walking path, picnic and seating areas, and has open turf areas. And if you can see, there's 2 courts that are on the there's 3 courts. There's 2 courts side by side on the north side of the court massing. And so we would be looking at doing those 2 courts. And there's a yellow line coming down from the corner of that court to the nearest residential property line. And that is at 383 feet. And so looking at that and then comparing it to the noise study, it kind of falls in some good parameters as far as sound. Based on the report that we came across in British Columbia. And then I do have an overview that, again, this is a part of the packet. So those are those 3 tennis courts that we would look to convert for multi-stripe. And so we would be bringing in, this already has a court facility. So there's already tennis nets. Tennis nets will be left alone. Tennis striping would be left alone. Fencing would be left alone. We would just be striping the 4 additional pickleball courts as shown in red, as well as bringing in 4 movable nets on casters. This is something similar that we've done at Del Prado Playfield, where they have multi-use tennis and pickleball, as well as at Rancho Conejo. So it's a system that we've been comfortable with. The community's been comfortable with it and using it. And so at Triumpho, that's the extent, just because we already have fencing, we already have space to do it within a court kind of situation, court amenity. And then going to Estella Park, again, it's a little bit smaller park, 1.9 acres. It's the L-shaped parcel in the center of this location map. But it does have 1 lighted multi-use court, has futsal, which is 5-a-side soccer, tennis court, and 2 striped pickleball courts. When we initially redid this court, I believe in like 2016, 2017, we only had tennis there. And something that we as staff saw was it was being used for futsal. And then also because of the pickleball community was growing and use was growing, we thought it would be good to put pickleball net or pickleball courts there as well. just because hey, there's space there. We'll see if people are using it. People do in fact use it for pickleball. I've been out there on occasion, and even at one of the public meetings, we showed up and there was a group of about 5 people playing pickleball on a Saturday morning. So they brought their own net and they were there with all their buddies and family, and they were just playing pickleball. And so Estella is pretty small. It is really close to the neighbors. I know it's hard to see on this map, but on the exhibit in the packet, it's about 10 feet from street line to residential property line, because the tennis court way back when was put in there adjacent to the residential land use. It's lived as a tennis court for a long time. This is actually our oldest park facility. And so it's been a tennis court for many years. We haven't had any issues of noise in the park. I know we've had other issues that don't apply to from a use standpoint, but we don't have any issues with tennis being used or pickleball being used there now. So the intent would be, hey, let's try out some permanent nets that are movable. We did have a tennis net that was movable that got damaged years ago. One thing that's always tricky with parks is a well-used park is a well-policed park. And so by introducing pickleball and interest of pickleball players, there will be more use there, most likely, just because of the amenity is getting better. But then you have more eyes on the park. You have more people around. So we might have better luck, and staff feels that it's good to try it out one more or 2 more times before giving up on it, since we have replaced that tennis net over the years quite a few times. But we feel that we can introduce this additional use from a permanent standpoint at Estella Park as well. And Estella it's a typical neighborhood park. It's just very small, but the amenities are very typical. Open turf area, playground. We do have an off-leash dog area that's unique. We only have 3 of those throughout the district at neighborhood parks. But Estella is a resource that can be utilized for pickleball. So that's why staff put this in the mix as part of the study. And as you can see, the 2 red striped courts, that's existing how the courts are striped. If we did make this permanent, we would probably make some shifts and some other repairs on the court surface itself. That way, just kind of maximize the use out there. I was talking to a pickleball player, and they were saying if it shifted a little bit further from the fence, then you can have a little bit better use, maybe a little not as good lighting, but a little bit better use on a play during the day. And so this one, again, court's already there, fencing's already there. It would be the nets on casters, as well as we may introduce a new tennis net or some sort of dividing barrier, since we don't have a barrier there, so you don't have errant pickleballs going from court to court. And then we would have signage, and we would have signage at Triumpho too, kind of explaining the trial period, providing information to the website, as well as a contact to get a hold of. So, and then moving along to Oak Brook Neighborhood Park. Again, part of the analysis that got us to 19 parks included a couple neighborhood parks, one of which was Oak Brook Neighborhood Park. And so this park was originally zoned for a playfield. However, when they developed the second half of the park, the community wanted passive, more neighborhood park kind of level, because it serves the neighborhood directly there. And so we kind of pivoted, and we ended up developing it. We still do permits and such there through our sports folks. However, it's more of a grand neighborhood park than a playfield that it possibly could have been. But it's 14 acres, basketball court, 1 netball court. It's got a sand volleyball court. It has 2 horseshoe pits, parking lot, restroom, playground. It's got 2 shade structures, actually. Again, because of the size, we put 2 shade structures in there. Got a great walking path and trails, some picnic areas and seating. And then, like most parks, it has some just good open, passive turf area to play in. So, and then if you look, again, in the report, it's a little bit clearer, but on the screen, the courts are in the center of the map there, and I'll show you an enlargement in a second. But the closest residential properties are to the north, and those are 270 feet from where the courts would be striped. And so here's a more detailed layout. Oakbrook's a little bit different because it's just an open court right now for basketball and netball. We would be removing the netball standard. So it's basically like a backboard post with a net on top of it because there's no backboard because it's netball. And so we would be removing those and filling the concrete there where those holes were or where the posts were. And then we would be erecting a temporary fence, possibly doing or most likely doing some windscreen on it, depending if we can secure the fence with stakes and or stands properly with high winds over time. And we would be doing striping as well as we would be bringing in temporary nets. We wouldn't be mounting permanent nets in this location either. They would all just be caster nets because the intent would be that after the 6-month trial, we would be taking away the temporary improvements and then be able to, come back with further review from the data that's collected as part of the analysis. So, and then I know I talked about the analysis, but basically they did a sound study and prepared a report, and then they actually prepared guidelines. So they gave parameter guidelines for how many numbers of courts, whether there was sound mitigation or not, as well as if it was over hard and soft ground. And like most studies, there's a disclaimer, to topography as well as foliage with trees, shrubbery, any mounding on the park, even if it's a slight berm, will affect sound, right? So it will affect sound. And so these are, again, are guidelines. Not every single park or location that you would put pickleball courts would have these, but these are very sound guidelines based on the study that was prepared. And then the chart to the bottom was our park. So we had 2 courts at Estella, and yet we're only 10 feet away. And so in comparison, we would most likely need to be over 213 feet away to meet a 50 decibel level. And then at then at Oakbrook, it's 270 feet away, which that is 57 feet more than what you would need per the study that was provided in the report. And then Triumpho exceeded that at 383 for 4 courts. And the metric that they provided, again, over hard ground or soft ground, there is a difference, but hard ground, it was 295, which is almost 100 feet more than what the guidelines would direct you. And then the soft ground was a little bit less at 246. So with that, it's more just, hey, we'd like to take a look and kind of compare notes with other folks and how they're doing it and what they're doing, right? So being able to kind of assess each park site's different. Again, characteristics are different at each site, whether it be topography, use, trees, all that. And so just really kind of wanted to highlight what the trial included, right? So the trial as proposed would include temporary improvements, which would be the caster nets and fencing and windscreen, depending on the site, as well as signage. And then the painted court striping, staff has tried tape when we've tried pickleball at other locations or just for other fun rec stuff that our folks are doing for summer camp and things. And it's very temporary. So if we were to do a multi-month trial, we would have issues with it, whether it be a trip or a slip, or we would be going out there and redoing it. So staff thought it would be best to do painted striping. So we would be doing painted. And again, it's 4 courts at Triumpho, multi-use with tennis, 2 courts at Estella with for existing 2 courts, but in a multi-use setting with tennis and futsal. And then 2 courts at Oakbrook Neighborhood Park, replacing the netball court. So that's kind of the breakdown. The month term of the trial would be 6 months. We feel that this will give us a good snapshot and get us good data to see, if we move forward with one or all of them tonight with board approval, we feel that we can get a good amount of data from, late winter season, if we can get a contractor out there to stripe and get some nets in time, and then we can see it in early spring or through spring and then into early summer. So then we can kind of see it through the seasons and see it through patterns, because not everyone's going to want to go play when it's 40 degrees out, right? Versus not everyone's going to want to play when it's 100 degrees out. So trying to find like a good metric, and staff thought jumping through seasons was a good thought to be able to have a good amount of data from a use standpoint. And then to the environmental analysis, we would include a baseline study. So in briefly talking with our environmental consultant, possible environmental consultant, we would be looking at doing a baseline study. So we get the bar set, and then we would be doing incremental review. And so this would be really our quantitative data. So that way we can measure sound, measure noise, measure sound, measure use, measure traffic, and then take a picture and look at what pickleball does to a park site, right? And then we would also be doing, so that would be at Triumph on Oak Brook. We know Estella, it's too close. We don't feel that it is proper to spend funds on something that we know that we're going to be higher than, and it's an existing use, and the community has been using it as pickleball. However, we're really looking at that from like a public online survey. If someone calls myself or staff to have comments or concerns about the trial, then we'll take that in consideration. But we will not be doing, as proposed, environmental at Estella Park. But then we do have public online survey, and that's something that we've done in the past, whether it's outreach for like Conejo community or outreach for other kind of uses and such. I know Rochelle's folks use the surveys a lot for different things. And so to kind of taking a look at, hey, just to kind of see how's it going out there. And that's the qualitative, right? So we're getting the data quantitative through the analysis of the environmental change. And then from the people perspective, we're kind of getting the qualitative. And that would be available to anyone who can get on there and take a look at the survey. We will have certain questions that will obviously direct you to the park that you're talking about, to maybe where someone lives, or do you use the park how many times a week, that type of thing. So that way it kind of gives us a little bit better sense of it. And then so a cost, that was something that we talked about, that we thought that we could be able to address moving forward to figure out where we wanted to do pickleball courts. We're in the range of about $5,000 to $10,000 per site. And for just the temporary improvements, so the striping, the nets, and the fencing. And then we're estimated roughly about $30,000 for the environmental. And so we feel that we should be able to get some good data with services for that cost. We are not doing any sound mitigation due to enforcement of making someone use a quiet ball or a quiet paddle, because there is technology out there. Would be very difficult, and we haven't really seen that kind of come on board yet. We've heard comments about playability and usability, but it would be very hard to confirm that someone's using the right paddle or using the right ball. And so we're not looking at doing any enforcement challenges or any enforcement because of those challenges, as well as the cost of sound mitigating equipment. The paneling, the barriers that they discussed in the survey, as well as through research that we found, it's about $15,000 just for the sound barrier, and for one court. And so the goal would be that in future development, if we were putting permanent courts in, staff would be taking a look at the latest and greatest technologies. We would be trying to implementing what we need to implement to be able to mitigate those sounds and incorporate that. But at this time, since it's a temporary trial, we're not looking to put more money into the trial just to get a reduction of possibly 5 to 10 decibels, just because of from a cost and value standpoint, since it's temporary. And then want to hit home the point of it's a 6-month trial. Calling it a trial for a reason. The goal is that we are introducing this to these park sites, and that when the 6-month trial closes, we would be taking those temporary improvements away. We would be assessing it. And I know I totally jumped off of my PowerPoint here. Now the battery's dead. Yeah, so this is the overview. And then next steps. So yeah, the conclusion of the trial would be removing all of the improvements. And then we would be preparing documentation in concert with our ad hoc committee, as well as with our environmental analysis, and coming up with a conclusion, data, a report, and then possible future considerations for the board, right? So possible future action, right? So whether, hey, this is too loud, we shouldn't do it here, to, hey, it's not that bad, maybe we could do courts here. And whether that's, hey, we do a multi-striped, or like in Oak Brook's case, it would be designated, dedicated courts, or we keep them at Estella, and we didn't hear any complaints. We tried it for a little bit, and we'll kind of keep it going and see how it goes. And we would bring that, but we would have to bring that back to the board for action. So that's something that I really wanted to highlight with the report, is that, hey, this is just a step in the process. It's been a multi-year process for the community, as well as staff, as well as the board. And we would just want to continue to make progress on that. So, hey, as year 3 comes around in our capital plan, and Melissa has some money to be able to implement some new projects, then there could be opportunity. So we know where to look, right? We know what is the next step, where is the next step in pickleball at CRVD Parks. So with that, I'm available for questions, but I believe you might want to go to public comment first.
Comments at this time?
Nope, just me.
Okay, well, good report, Mr. Mooney, and I am really pleased that you included that sound study and the whole study up at Vancouver, British Columbia. Very, very useful. At this time, I'm going to ask board members, have they any comments, questions of staff based on what you've heard so far?
I have lots. of
Director
questions.
Nichols.
I have lots of questions. I would start with Director
No,
Cusworth.
I'll
'cause I-
start with you.
All right. Thank you, Andrew, for the review. Even though I have been on the ad hoc committee, it's not going to stop me from asking lots of questions, because I learned a lot through this process. I even learned a little bit how to play pickleball from my cohort over here with the school board. Thank you for that invitation as well. I got to blame somebody. This is a quick review. Actually, on Monday, I went to visit all the park sites. I figured it was a good day, Monday being a holiday, school was out to kind of see how things were going. Oak Brook was pretty busy park. I mean, the place was, I wouldn't say it was packed, but people were scattered all over the park. The only things that weren't being used was sand volleyball and the horseshoe pits. Otherwise, there were people everywhere, all over the park. Even the netball and basketball courts had skateboarders, scooters, and bicycles on them. They liked that little area over there. Estella Park just had one person on it in the tennis court that was playing a boombox very loud, and with the style of music and certain language that I would prefer not listening to, but nonetheless, he was entertaining the entire neighborhood with it. There were a couple of dog owners there with their dogs in the off-leash area. So it was just probably a typical Estella Park scenario. Of the 4 parking stalls, 3 of them were taken, even just with that, with those group there. And then Triumphal was also just as busy as Oak Brook was. Place was, full of kids, full of families. All the tennis courts were being used by tennis players. And actually there was a couple, a father and a daughter, that left because they couldn't get on the court soon enough. But it was a good day to get out. I also went over to Rancho Conejo to observe the pickleball courts at that time. That place too was bustling with pickleball players, as well as the park, people all over the park there. I actually found a place to park there at Rancho Conejo, which sometimes is hard to do. But I just wanted to get just kind of my own view of the sites. I walked around each facility, walked around each park and looked at it and make sure I had a good perspective on everything. I do have a couple of questions that I've generated through the process. And I think because reading the packet, seeing it all in one place, even though we've reviewed a lot of parts of this, and then even with the study that was presented, which had some new information that I had not been aware of before, was very helpful. But I just wanted to make it clear, and Mr. Mooney, if you could just kind of restate, what is the actual purpose of this trial? Is it to assess like these as like sample pickleball courts and parks as a concept for the park district? Or is it specifically looking at these three parks and how pickleball might be introduced if it were to be at those three locations only?
So first off, it would be to review those specific sites. However, everything that we do, we look to excel. And so if we find standards and find things that work at another park facility or district wide, like the study created guidelines based on sound and use of pickleball on the park properties, that we could possibly, depending on ad hoc committee and the board direction of, hey, we might be able to come up with guidelines based on where and how far do we need to be away from residential or other uses, that type of thing. So, but the main intent is we have 5 projects on our capital improvement plan, and we need to get ready for those 5 sites that are currently on the list to
Okay.
execute.
Okay. And then with the study, you mentioned that there's going to be the noise assessment, the noise, there's also the traffic and just general park use. Are there any criteria? I'm just going to pick on noise and specifically, since the study talks about 50 dBA, decibels for humans. Is it the city's sound ordinance? Is it the number of complaints we receive? How do you go through the study and then have something at the end to measure it against, to say, hey, it was a success, it was a failure, or somewhere in between?
Yeah, so from a park use, and it's included in the report, they did 50 decibels. So they were on the low end of acceptable. And I believe the report stated they did that on purpose. But locally, we actually have a range. So for residential, it's 55 to 65 is acceptable. That's acceptable range. There's multiple levels of acceptable. It's basically every 5 decibel changes. It's conditionally acceptable would be the highest range based on city standards. For parks, though, we range from 55 to 75 decibels. And so that's based on the city's general plan. So they actually have a noise chapter in the general plan. And that's based on the latest general plan that was published.
Okay. And then what about survey and input from the neighbors, from pickleball community, complaints, supports? How does that factor into it?
Yeah, and so that's part of the survey, right? So part of the qualitative nature of my ear might hear differently than your ear, or I might live at the end of the street and not hear anything versus I'm right on the corner and I hear everything. And so it's that factor of, hey, we want to have that human factor as part of it. So that is the outlet for the public to be able to provide. And just like any project, staff's available to discuss and talk and review items, but we want to be able to get data. So we're trying to make a engine to be able to collect that data. And then we feel the surveys a good way to do that.
Okay. You covered some of this information already, so I won't ask it all, but I was looking at the site preparation for each park. You mentioned, which was one of my questions, you're removing the netball standards at Oak Brook, so those would no longer be there. There's already existing striping at Estella, but there would be striping added at Triumphal and Oak Brook. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then you also mentioned all the temporary improvements would be removed at the end of the 6-month period, but that the striping would remain. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So the intent would be, since the striping's there, that we would keep the striping there until we go back with additional board action. So if board and for instance, Estella striping's already there, maybe we have issues of, again, it's board action type stuff, but hey, we would have pickleball removed from there, which I don't think that would happen, but maybe we remove the permanent net because it's too much of a nuisance. Hey, it's okay when people come and play a little bit, but you're making it too available to the public. And then even like in the case of Oak Brook, would be the intent would be, hey, maybe we can live with it for a little bit, and then maybe we look at doing something permanent. Triumpho, I think, is a different case, just because, as you mentioned, tennis is used there, and we use it for programming and permits and such. And part of the original outreach we had in the summer of 22 was in discussion with that group of saying there's just too much tennis being played here. We really don't want you to take a court away. Our initial concept did take one court away just because of from a footprint standpoint to be able to minimize impacts to the site. But from that outreach and from those comments, I've made mental notes. We haven't prepared new plans yet because we haven't got there yet. However, we would be moving the permanent courts to not take over tennis if we were to move forward with pickleball courts at Triumpho for a permanent improvement. So it would be a little bit different at Triumpho, depending on how the study goes. Hey, we need to remove it. Hey, maybe we could live with multi-strike there possibly. But that's to be determined for further action from committee review, staff review to taking that back to the board. And we feel that, hey, we could keep striping there and remove the nets and we wouldn't create the same impact as having the nets there. So.
Okay, I guess my question then would be, and I understand your position, but if the striping were to remain, is that considered a temporary improvement or a permanent improvement?
Depends on it. I mean, technically we can make it, it could be temporary for years or it could be temporary for months, correct? But since it is a permanent improvement as far as painting, I would say that it would be, it's more than temporary, but possibly less than permanent because we can term it. So we could remove it, we could restripe it if that's whether we decide that tonight or in further action from the board.
But my preference would be, and I guess this was my understanding when we were talking about pulling up the stakes literally at the end of 6 months, that would include striping in my mind. Because to me, that's sending a signal to our community. Yes, in fact, it was temporary and we're putting it all back the way it was until the board determines it's permanent. So that would be my preference. Okay, continuing on here. I just wanted to clear, I think you stated this, but is the environmental analysis really a comprehensive analysis or just studies, so to speak, of noise, traffic, and parking?
Yeah, it would not be a complete comprehensive analysis. We would take a look at those 3 items. However, we can deduce from those items general environmental impacts and things of that nature, right? So if there isn't that much more traffic, there won't be that much more emissions for the trees or the birds or, you know, whatever the environmental consultant kind of reviews as part of their environmental standards. So we can deduce from impacts of those 3 items to how it would impact maybe other things and make some generalized environmental considerations for it.
Okay.
But by no means is this a complete environmental, initial study environmental review of pickleball courts.
Okay, all right, that's what I was thinking, yes. And then since we do have a pretty comprehensive sound study that was provided in the packet of information here, I guess my question is, what additional information would we glean from the study? I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it, but are we looking to confirm their recommendations as proposed, or are we looking to set our own standards as to what we think appropriate setbacks would be?
Yeah, so I think again, back to every site's different, just like each one of our 3 sites that's up for consideration, it's different. And so the factor of, yeah, they have guidelines for their parks and what conditions are available in their parks. However, this would be a review to add to what we've found through their study to be able to kind of layer our response of, hey, we found something that other people have done. However, we want to take a closer look at our parks and see to make sure that we're not making improper impacts to our parks. And like I mentioned earlier, it could turn into a guideline document for us. It could set precedent saying, hey, we can only go a certain amount of feet, certain amount of courts from a residential property line because of use or issue. However, I think the tricky thing is you would still impact the park, people in the park if you change the use, just like Triumpho, hey, we made a little bit bigger playground, right? 2 years ago or so. Hey, a little bit taller, a little bit more kind of fun stuff to do. Well, was that an impact or were we replacing it? So it's kind of similar to, hey, if we bring in pickleball courts or tennis courts, how do we kind of set those standards? It's definitely a gray area, So it would be tricky to make generalized guidelines. However, we can set that up if someone, if committee and or staff and the board would be interested in that.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then I had some questions on Estella Park in the property line proximity, which you addressed. You mentioned that there would not be a noise study there, which I was going to question why we even would need something that's obvious if it's 10 feet away. I think my preference would be, again, since it's an existing situation and that park has been there over 60 years, as you mentioned, the first park, probably should have never put a tennis court right along the property line, but that's where it stands. I think my recommendation would be, let's just install sound barriers there. Whatever money we would have spent on a sound study, just install the sound barriers as a good neighbor on two sides along the property line. So I just leave that as a comment at this point. And then also, as I mentioned, when I was there on Monday, 3 of the 4 parking stalls were taken and nobody was playing basketball. There were no families there at the park, on the playground, and there was nobody on the multi-use court, either pickleball, tennis, or futsal. And yet already 3 of the 4 parking stalls were taken. I also went up and down Herbs Road, and until you get almost all the way down to Teal Boulevard, there is no street parking. So there's no street parking on Hillcrest, no street parking virtually on Herbs Road. If we even had a pickleball court with 4 people showing up to play pickleball, they're taking all 4 parking stalls. How would we expect to accommodate all the other park users with only 4 parking stalls there?
That's one of those interesting parts of how, you know, a lot of the square footage is driveway and parking at that park, just how it was developed. That's something that's a little tricky because we do have neighbors, as you mentioned, you had 1 person in the park, but 3 cars in the parking lot. So it's, parking would be a possible issue there. Not to say that it won't weed out the boombox player if there's people playing pickleball. And then too, if that's your spot, maybe you carpool with your friends and, you know, just like any other traffic issue that we have living in Southern California, you kind of accommodate and try to figure it out with the traffic flow and parking and stuff like that. So, and two, there may be folks that can walk there, right? Some folks that don't want to walk there with a net, but they'll walk down there with their paddles and play too, since it is neighborhood park level. So.
No, I understand that. I just see that as it's going to be quite a challenge. Then moving off to Triumphal Park, I was really intrigued with the sound study, especially since this is in a canyon, this park, and the reflected sound and echoing of sound in a box canyon, which was, you know, one of my concerns to begin with when this park first came up, which is why when we were looking at the priorities, I voted in opposition to that being a priority location. But I had a question for you. With this being a community park, why is it that Triumphal Community Park is the only community park that doesn't have a community center?
Yeah, so well before my time with the district, but in 1979, the district actually came and brought a plan with an environmental impact report that included a community center. And so I've done some research to the archives and I haven't got there yet, haven't found direct information. However, my understanding was due to there was need expressed through the documentation that I have with the residents in general. But then there was opposition of putting a developed park there to begin with. But then to have a community center there. So my understanding was because of the neighbors didn't want a community center, so a community center didn't happen there. But again, I haven't been able to find any documentation that gives me a factual that's just from what I've heard and how it's played out, since it is one of 2 community parks that we don't have a community center at. So
yeah, that is what I have heard as well in history past, but I have not seen anything to document that, but that was my understanding as well.
Yeah, and originally the property was a school site. So it was a school site. There was a 5.5 acre park, and then there was a school site adjacent, similar to some of our other parks and school sites throughout town. And so then it was planned not to put a school there. So the district came in and purchased the land.
Okay.
So.
Then I have one last topic here. This is regarding active recreation in our community. Do our neighborhood parks typically include active recreational components?
Yes.
Okay, and does the general plan speak to like how active recreation will be implemented either at well, I'm sure, neighborhood parks, community parks, play fields and so forth?
Yeah, so we do have, part of our master plan, we do have standards set for our neighborhood parks all the way through our special facilities. And we do include typically both passive and active recreational opportunities. However, it's just a list, right? So it's playgrounds, possibly courts, possibly sports fields, that type of stuff. But typically it's kind of a tweener park facility versus when you get up to a play field, more active recreation, typically with lights. And then when you get up to a community park, it is like, as you mentioned, a community center with play fields, as well as lights possibly and such. So a bit more active as you kind of go up the scale in the hierarchy. But as far as to what level, we do have development of park standards, space standards as part of our master plan. And it discusses just local factors, right? So we discuss local factors, and there's 13 different items, but basically it's, hey, time and distance from parks, demographics, geographical locations, any local traditions, and any new trends and patterns in recreation. So it's kind of like, hey, like when we brought Page Lane back to the community when it got converted into a neighborhood park through the master plan process, and it was going to be a neighborhood park. We took it to the community with the current standards of fitness nodes, 2 playgrounds, a 2 to 5 and a 5 to 12. Typically we have a restroom in new developed parks because that's something that people like, so they can stay longer and use it. And so it's really just kind of, hey, the trends and the standards, but it depends on what feedback and the locality of what's happening at that site. So, and I think for good measure, it's broad in the master plan, but at least gives some standardization to, hey, depending on the need and use of the facility, we can put different amenities in there. So you might have more activity at one neighborhood park versus less at another one. And it just depends on, space, geographics, topography, all that fun stuff as well. So.
Okay, and I know a lot of times we try to reflect the neighborhoods within the parks. I know you use that a lot with your playground equipment themes. And I presume that's the same with the type of amenities that go in parks, reflecting the neighborhood around it. Is that correct?
Sure.
Okay, all right. How many of our playgrounds, how many of our parks have tennis courts?
We have 19 tennis courts and we have 5 parks. 9 facilities that have tennis. 9. Yeah.
And are those neighborhood, community, or play field?
It's a mix, but typically we only have 1 tennis court, 1 neighborhood park with tennis court. It's a Stella. Yeah. And then we have 4 play fields that have tennis courts, and then we have 4 community parks that have tennis courts.
Okay. And then one last question. With the recent news that Westlake and Camarillo are adding pickleball facilities, do you have an idea of how many courts they are adding and when those might become online?
Yeah, so Westlake's is 4, and then that's at the community park up on the hill off Teal Boulevard. And spring, summer is the best estimate that we were provided. Camarillo is a little bit different since they're starting from scratch. They've demoed their pool and they're going through permits right now. And so they've had some challenges or processing through the permit process. So they best case 1+ years. And then, but they're looking at phasing. So they're doing anywhere from 5 to 6 courts in the first phase, going all the way up to 19 total courts. But then it's based on funding, right? So that I think it's like 1.4 and change million dollars they have currently for their phase 1, possibly phase 2, depending on what bids come in at. And then it's more just, hey, as funds are available, they can develop out that property.
Very good. Well, that'll help with the regional issues as well. That concludes my comments for now. Thank you for the extra time, Mr. Chair.
Oh, you're sure welcome, Director Nichols. We appreciate it. Director Cusworth.
So a couple of comments on Estella Park because my husband and I went to play pickleball at Estella Park several times, and at the time there was one net there for tennis. And so you just move the net around for pickleball, but the net would get completely thrashed. And I'm going to assume because there was futsal there. And so not that anybody would be trying to ruin the net. It would just, you put a bunch of teenage boys in a court kicking a ball around is probably going to hurt the net. So are you proposing to have a tennis net and 2 pickleball nets that are all going to be on casters and still include futsal? And if so, why do you think this would be successful?
Yeah, so the intent would be to keep tennis there because typically we try not to remove an amenity. Part of our outreach, we did have one local that used to play tennis there, and because the net's been damaged and taken away over the years, stopped playing there, but would like to see the tennis net back. One thing that's kind of in our favor is we could do a tennis net that serves as a barrier in between the pickleball, so you don't have errant balls going in between the 2 pickleball courts during use. So the intent would be that if we could try tennis, yes, and pickleball, yes, and hoping for success. But as I mentioned, hey, depending on who's there, we actually had the tennis net used to be permanent before when it was only tennis, and it used to get cut down. And so that's why we came to the conclusion of, hey, let's make it multi-use. Futsal's being played here, and then move it off to the side with some directions and such. And so the goal would be to try. Right. So sometimes it's just a process and we got to try again.
So my question was, you're going to have 3 nets on that court?
Correct.
Okay, so we're just going to see if that works, even though it didn't work in the past.
Correct.
So it's just going to be okay.
Yep. And back to a well-used park is a well-policed and safer park. So I feel that, hey, if there's more pickleball use happening there because there is a net there on site, that hopefully we don't have the issues that we've had in the past.
But there will be 3 nets.
Correct.
Okay. My other question was Rancho Conejo on the list. I don't remember of sites to add pickleball courts to.
Yes, it's in year 10. So it was of the 5 courts, it was lower in priority because it already has courts, as well as it's on the west side of town versus serving the central and the eastern sections of town.
So is there any reason why we couldn't do Rancho Conejo sooner? Because it seems like the pickleball people have consistently said that they like to have a lot of courts in one space because it's very more of a party feel with a lot of people there than private parties going to just 1 or 2 courts. I'm just wondering, what's the reasoning that we don't want to just put some more courts at Rancho Conejo? It's fairly centrally
So
located.
it could be 2.5 to 3 times the cost, first off. So from a feasibility standpoint, they're great amount of cost because we don't have any off-street or on-street parking. It's all off-street on the property. It would be the 3rd phase of parking at that park site. So we know that if we put in any more amenities at the park site, we would have to add more parking. And so there would have to be some review of that as well. And so it's not just courts, it's taking a look at the whole park site. And then unfortunately, where we would be able to fit parking, the feedback that we got from the neighbors and the group there was it would be right at their front entry gate and behind their houses. And so it'd be moving parking closer to them because that's all the real estate we have within the park that wouldn't offset existing use. And that makes the best sense.
So
from a site
Rancho Conejo
standpoint.
Playfield is not, or Rancho Conejo where you have the pickleball sites now is not really in your sites to add to.
It's in my sites, but it's in year 10. Yeah. Based on the priorities set by the one by the pickleball community, it was lower in priorities of the 5 sites because of feasibility and impact to that site, as well as through the CIP process from a, 1, funding, but then 2, just from a, hey, we already have pickleball courts there. And so being able to be equitable to all of the areas of the district and provide more courts throughout the district.
And that's what the pickleball people have said that they want. They don't want courts there.
No, they do want courts there. That's one of their higher priority courts.
Oh, I thought you just said that they wanted, I wasn't understanding what you were saying.
No, the district. So we got to provide courts for everyone, everywhere. And so amenities, I should say. And so we looked at putting more courts on the west side of town wouldn't be equitable and serving the whole district's population.
Okay.
And so central and east served a higher priority.
That's all I have.
Yes, Director Bus.
I just have a couple questions because it was very thorough between Director Nichols and your presentation. So can pickleball courts, if we make them, be converted back to tennis courts if, say, people stop playing pickleball? Is it the same material used?
Yeah, you would still have a concrete slab, but it would be a different fence layout if you were to do permanent courts. So you would have to do some coring and removing the posts of the fencing and the posts of the net if it's a full permanent court structure. But the slab could be reused and rehabbed and patched.
Okay, I was just curious about. And then on Estella Park, is there any way to add more parking?
We're only taking away amenities. You know, it's a postage stamp. It's a very small facility and we already have a lot of amenity in there. So it'd be very difficult to add more parking.
Do we own that small piece of land right in front of it?
Where the dog park is?
Oh, is that the
Yeah,
dog park?
That's the dog park.
portion?
That's part of the park. It's actually two different parcels.
Oh, okay, that's why.
Yeah.
That's why it has a subdivision. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bus. Director Huffer.
Not really questions, just a couple of comments. I probably have as long a history on the pickleball discussions here at the Park District. I've been on the pickleball committee since it was instituted back, and I believe you said it was 2021. It's been 2.5 years. We're just getting to the exploratory trial stage, looking at the possibility of putting in pickleball courts. When we first started this process 2.5, close to 3 years ago, we looked at most of the parks that are in our system and developed some criteria. The small neighborhood parks we felt just wouldn't work because you might be able to squeeze in 1 or maybe 2 pickleball courts, but pickleball probably more so than I would say tennis, but pickleball tends to be a very social sport, and having just 1 court might not be ideal for people who are interested in playing pickleball. So one of the criteria we were looking at was sites where we could put ideally 4 to 6 pickleball courts in one site. We were looking at sites that either have sufficient parking or parking could be added without a lot of difficulty, without impacting other amenities, as Andrew was saying. Sites that either have restrooms or restrooms could be added with without a lot of additional expense, and sites that are either currently lit or lighting could be added, again, without a lot of additional cost and difficulty. Another criterion that we were looking at, as Director Cusworth was asking about, sure, the pickleball people would love to have all of their pickleball courts at one site and just basically take over Rancho Conejo, make it nothing but a pickleball site. And they want to have tournaments and all this other stuff, but it's not really the way the Park District has operated any of our amenities. We don't have all of the soccer fields in one place. We don't have all the tennis courts in one place. We don't have all the basketball courts in one place, although we probably don't have enough basketball courts. We don't have all the baseball fields in one site. We like to have, as much as is practical, have our amenities available throughout the community. As Andrew pointed out, the bulk of our pickleball courts are in Newbury Park and the western part of our district. It's not impossible for residents in central or eastern portions of the district to drive to these courts, but it would be nice for pickleball players who live in those parts of the community that have something more convenient. We try to do that with all of our amenities, not just pickleball. So location was certainly important. But this is still, after 2.5 years, it's still just initial stages, and we're just looking at the possibilities. All right. We don't want to get into a situation that, and I've read several communities where they went ahead and put in some pickleball courts, and only after the fact got so many complaints and so much negative feedback that they had to basically remove the courts. Well, you're paying for new courts and then you're paying to remove courts. That's maybe not twice the expense, but it's certainly a lot of wasted money. So what we're trying to do is study the feasibility. Mention has been made of pickleball courts in neighboring areas. Some other areas like Westlake Village, where they're looking, is up on the top of a hill. There's nothing around it but open space and a YMCA building. There are no homes anywhere nearby. They have the luxury of a big open space that's not close to anything. Camarillo is looking at adding pickleball courts next to the airport. And the only thing close there is the airport, and I don't think pickleball is going to be anywhere near as noisy as airplanes landing and taking off. And then they have some empty fields or shopping on other areas where the pickleball courts. So they have the luxury there in Camarillo of a lot of space that's nowhere close to homes. We don't have that luxury here in the Conejo Valley. Virtually all of our park sites are relatively close to homes, with a few exceptions. Most of our park sites are being heavily used already by other activities. So the reason we're proposing nothing more than a study is to determine, is it feasible or not? If after 6 months, we determine that, hey, it's just not going to work, well, we'd love to be able to provide pickleball courts for our community, but we don't have a location. We're stuck, all right? But we have to be able to study it. It was suggested, well, do it for a couple of weeks. Well, as Andrew pointed out, you need a long enough study to determine if winter, spring, summer, if it's being used and what kind of impact it has. We're talking about including outside professional engineers, sound engineers, looking at the potential sound impacts. Okay, we've been getting lots of letters and emails from people saying the noise from pickleball is absolutely horrible. Well, how do you know that unless it's actually been studied? If indeed the noise is horrible after we studied for 6 months, then much as I would love to see pickleball courts, much as the pickleball community would love to see pickleball courts, it can't happen. The purpose of a study is to study, to find out whether or not it's feasible. So that's what we're proposing here tonight, is a study to determine the feasibility of putting in permanent pickleball courts in several locations. All right, that's what we're talking about. That's what we're discussing this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Huffer. I just have a few comments. First of all, I had the opportunity to have a conversation with Claudia Bill de la Pena, who has been an elected official. She's been in a position that 5 board members here have been in. We've got to take as much information as is available to us in order to make the proper decision. We'll take information, whether it's in line with our previous thinking, current thinking, or whatever. We've got to consider whatever is out there. That's how, as Director Huffer was talking about, that's how decisions are made. We, as individual directors, have to solicit as much information to put into our decision-making process. And individuals who've been elected officials, et cetera, totally understand that. And they realize the process that we have to go through if we're going to be honest to the individuals who elected us. We're representing each individual. They can't all be here tonight like you are. And I should just say right now, thank you very much for taking time out of your evening to be here and show your support, et cetera, voice your opinion on this particular topic. So thank you all. And thank you for those online and those many who have sent in comments, et cetera, via emails. We appreciate that. We need that in order to make a informed decision. One of the comments I was going to make in reference to input from different sources, our recreation administrator, Ms. Callis, always takes surveys on the participant satisfaction. Those individuals who participate in our programs, our classes, et cetera. And like some of the questions, overall, how satisfied were you with your class? And fortunately, we've been very fortunate based on the performance of our recreation department, 10 out of 10 satisfaction. The most popular class this season, and we do these like quarterly and different programs offered in classes. The most popular classes this session were number 1, pickleball. 9% of those who participated in the pickleball classes and courses and so forth, 9% responded. Second was tennis, and 6.1% of those who participated in tennis programs on classes, et cetera, responded. Number 3, dance, 6.1% also of those who participated in dance classes, et cetera, responded. Fourth, yoga, 5.2 of those who participated responded, and 5, swim lessons. And that's important information to get feedback from those who are actually learning and the various programs, et cetera. So another question, how much do you agree with the following statements? I would recommend this class. 93% of those who participated would recommend the class to others. The instructor was engaging. 95% said that the instructor was engaging. The instructor was well prepared, 94%. The facility equipment were clean, 96%. And lastly, the schedule was convenient. So as Director Huffer was stating, we've got a whole community to serve. We have to look at the 137,000, whatever it is in our district, and are we providing them with as many opportunities and amenities as we are the others? So it's not a black and white easy decision to make. We have to look at all the information and based on our experience, et cetera, and make that decision. So nothing is set in concrete. As Director Huffer said, this is a trial period, and we're going to gather as much information as possible in order to determine the effectiveness of the trial period. Also wanted to mention, and I mentioned this to Claudia Bilde LaPena, I live within a block of the Cal Lutheran North Campus, where, as you know, the LA Rams practice. And whether you like rap music or not, you hear rap music through their 6 months or whatever it is that they're practicing over there. They turn it up loud enough for, I know some, well, Director Huffer also lives in that neighborhood. So, I've been there since 1965, and when the Dallas Cowboys were there, we didn't have to deal with any of the noise pollution that we're getting from the LA Rams. But COU made the decision. They're getting compensated, et cetera. I spoke as a neighbor and I made my opinion known, but there's more those who wanted the Rams here than didn't. But, you know, there's situations where we didn't welcome, but they're there for the overall community, those who love the Rams, et cetera. We had the Rams for 6 or 7 years or whatever it is. So there's give and take, good and bad. And in reference again to Director Huffer's comments, at the end of the study, and I think Mr. Rooney's comments, at the end of this whole process, you know, the results might be worse than worst case, estimated they were going to be. Yet they could also be less negative than what, you know, we anticipated. So we don't know that until we go through this trial period. So that's where we are. And now we're going to go to the public comments. And I'm going to start with Claudia Bill de la Peña. No? Okay. I'll apologize for that, but I did have a conversation with her, so I feel like she's had her voice heard. Okay, now we're going to take them in the sequence that these cards were presented to me. And also, there is a comment card that at the end of the hearing we'll be reading into the record. If you're going to speak, you'll have, as an individual, 3 minutes. If you're representing an organization, you'll have 5 minutes. As mentioned earlier, if you would like to mention your name, please do, in the city of residence. And I have one public member who looks like she'd like to make a comment at this time. Would you mind getting up to? Okay. Other speakers have any opposition to that? I guess there's a situation there. I did see the card, but it was not at the top. Is that it? Okay. Yes, go ahead. If you wouldn't mind going up to the podium.
Hello. So my name is Dr. Bimo. I'm a medical doctor at UCLA and also a public health professional. So I'm here today, thank you for the opportunity for our neighbors and the board of directors to address this. And I stand to oppose the placement of pickleball courts at Trifonian Court. Okay, for several reasons. I think to address the few, I think I want to appreciate Director Nichols for raising some of the hard questions to the board and also to the public. And first of all, I think Director is it Chuck Hoffer mentioned that how do we know, pickleball's noise levels? We've been to pickleball players games and we have visited other sites and we have experienced that. And at our own clubhouse, we had a pickleball court and that has to be removed. And now it's a violation to play pickleball at our clubhouse. Okay. And, as a medical professional, it's very well established that how noise nuisance impact people's health, not just physical health, but mental health. Okay. It's not a question that pickleball is a sport growing in popularity, and people love to get together, have a good time. We do too, as neighbors. We want to foster community unity and get together occasionally. But imagine that, okay, living through that, hundreds of games, okay, 4 courts, 8 people on the field, all the time with our neighbors living up in the surrounding the park. And during that, from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., and you're proposing a 6-month trial, who says that it's a reasonable duration of time to gather your data? Because essentially you are proposing a human experiment on the people's health and people's sanity because of the impact of not just noise, but the pitch and the pattern and the impact of all those together on people's mental and physical health, okay? And there's a very good reason in the medical field, we have IRB in place to review the impact of this type of proposed studies before going forward, right? So those impact on our neighbors are tangible and also very real. And who's responsible for the impact of those? I have 3 kids, you know, and I'm a medical professional that have acquired and solace in our home is very important to us. And I wish you will consider this in our shoes, you know, as if you want to do this to your own family, your own children, your own grandchildren, living through this 6 months and with the possibility of being permanent. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Mo. Okay. Yes, if you're going to speak, speak at the podium, please.
What I was saying is that I do have Claudia Bill de la Pena's statement, if you would like me to read it first, or we could make
Read
it
it.
last,
No,
whatever you
as
want.
long as you're there and prepared. Are you, go ahead
Sure.
and read her statement.
Sure. Okay. This is from Claudia Bill de la Pena. Happy New Year to you. My family and I are among the more than 350 signers of the petition which Janet Wall submitted to you at your last board meeting. I attended one of the first park meetings about 2 or more years ago. Neighborhood opposition was recorded then, yet here we are tonight. I don't know of any other neighborhoods which collected hundreds of signatures in a short period to oppose pickleball courts. The park is situated in a canyon, and therefore the unique noise will echo loudly across many homes. Also, Triumpho Community Park is much smaller than the stated acreage because only half is usable. Triumpho simply is not the right location for pickleball per CRPD's own policies. Your own ordinance defines acoustic nuisances as major impacts. This is stated on page 5 of your ordinance manual. Pickleball has proven to be such a nuisance, which is why it is so difficult to find suitable locations. The popularity of pickleball shows that people are coming from all kinds of locations. It's why courts would be better placed in a district-wide park that's designed to accommodate people living up to 30 miles away, as defined in your own master plan. New pickleball courts in the cities of Westlake Village and Camarillo will no doubt relieve some of the pressure. Also, since the Rams have left CLU, maybe there is a partnership opportunity there. I do hope you will remove Triumpho Canyon Park from consideration tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Okay, David Birchman, who will be followed by Dale Minach. If I mispronounce your name, I apologize ahead of time. Go ahead, Mr. Birchman.
And my name's Dave Birchman. I'm a Thousand Oaks resident and mediocre pickleball player. I propose or I suggest that during this period of testing, I don't know if this has already come up during the outreach meetings that you had, that you establish a few simple rules to allow the maximum number of people to play during this testing period, such as not allowing instructors to reserve the courts as they do in Rancho Conejo, and to possibly establish one and done rule where if people are waiting to play, that people be required to relinquish the courts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Birchman. Dale Minach, to be followed by, we got 2 cards here.
My name's Dale Mina. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks, and I was previously a homeowner on Page Lane, and I was a champion of the Conejo Creek South Park, convincing quite a few of my neighbors that this was a good thing to their strong opposition. And I thank the district for doing that, especially Mr. Rooney, who was quite a champion, you know, in a professional sense for that part. I'm quite a pickleball fanatic. And I like to talk that I've heard quite a bit of opposition to pickleball courts. And I believe it is absolutely accurate that homeowners should be thought of in the location of pickleball courts. And I can say 2 out of the 3 locations are terrible. For 40 years, I was supervising sound engineer in Hollywood, and venue acoustics is part of my job duties. And so I think I'm qualified to make some comments now. If you're going only by decibels for sound, you are grossly mistaken. You have to look at rise time for the sound and decay of the sound. You have to look at frequency of the sound. And pickleball is of the racket meeting the ball on inappropriate surfaces, and a lot of that is tennis court surfaces, does make a tremendously jarring sound. And to subject homeowners to that, I think is wrong. And you should abandon Triumpho in particular. It's essentially a parabolic with the sound acoustics of the surrounding hillsides, and it's way too close to surrounding homes. Estrella, none of the pickleball players I've talked to wants to use that park at all for pickleball. One of the 4 parking spaces, 2 of which are handicapped. So only 2.
1 minute.
Okay. So I think you should abandon that site as well. The next thing that you have not discussed at all tonight is restriping of tennis courts for pickleball courts. You are creating a slip and fall hazard by the paint being applied over the top of tennis court striping. And you have maybe a few square inches, but that is a complete change of the surface, and it becomes very slick, like past couple days with the heavy dew and drizzle.
Wrap it up pretty soon.
Yep. And so even our instructor with the CRPD, Colette Burney, says, we're stopping game playing. We'll dink, but you can't run over those lines. You'll slip and fall. And I have slipped and fallen in that type of an occasion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bill, you're next. I had 3 cards, you know, for that gentleman. So, Bill Gorbert.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and not in capacity of my elected position on another board. As we all have discussed, pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the country. But we've outgrown our present courts. This proposal disperses the availability of courts and parking to central Thousand Oaks. The future of pickleball is, and I can say this as someone that has watched new sports come into our schools, that there will be a new team sport of pickleball. And eventually, and I just want to say, if you want to see the excitement of team pickleball, professional team pickleball is coming to the Conejo in 3 weeks. There's going to be Major League Pickleball, which has the best of the best, including the 17-year-old world champion and the 24-year-old male world champion. So anyway, I'm just saying that CIF will eventually adopt pickleball as a school sport. The sound that we can build sound screens. Now, I don't know, Mr. Mooney mentioned sound screens. I'm not sure of the cost of those. That's not my expertise as far as cost, but there can be sound screens to minimum. We can also put limits on the times as we do. The great doctor, thank you for speaking, mentioned from 7 to 10. Well, we have signs at all of our courts saying don't start before, I believe it's 7:30, but we can make it 8 o'clock. Every publication that I read, and yes, I'm an avid pickleball player myself, although not good, but every publication I read has included in it either advertising or articles regarding pickleball or regarding sound noise abating equipment, meaning paddles and balls. And we can ask for that. We can suggest that.
Bill, you have one more minute?
Okay. As far as parking at Estella, and I'm not overly enthused about Estella Park as a pickleball site. But as far as parking, when I went to the meeting there, I was talking to a staff person, I don't remember which one. And they did not park in the Stella parking lot. They parked in the parking availability that used to be for Hillcrest Christian when it was there. So there's additional parking just around the corner. Yeah, I have answer to the survey read by you, Chair Lang, and I don't remember about the answer. Anyway, I am here in full support and favor of pickleball at least one of the sites, Oak Brook, because I had a question real quick. What is the comparison of pickleball sound to basketball sound being bounced? Do we know that?
Off
And
the
I'm
top,
done.
off the top of my head, I do not have that.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate your comments. Janet Miller Wall, you're up. Yes, you can get closer, maybe?
Okay, thank you. I really don't have a lot to add tonight. My husband is home on family pet sitting duty, and he wants me to tell you he hopes you give local residents more consideration than we've given up to this point. That's all he had to say. And I would add that I don't agree with your CEQA exemptions. However, I completely understand CEQA's main function is to protect important elements of our environment that don't have a voice. We have a voice and it will be heard. Also, I've brought 19 more opposition votes from wonderful Thousand Oaks people, so I will be giving Andrew those signatures. There was one thing here I wanted to read to you if I can find it. There, you have two other letters that are not in the supplemental as well that people sent to me. But I noticed that you have information from British Columbia, but there is a pickleball noise impact assessment and abatement planning document from 2023 for the city of Centennial, Colorado. And I'd like to just read you one paragraph. It's a legislative declaration. It is hereby declared that protection and preservation of the home is of the highest importance, that unnecessary and excessive noise is a significant source of environmental pollution that threatens the public health, welfare, tranquility, and good order of the community, and that the prohibitions and other protections set forth in this article are enacted to secure and promote public peace, welfare, comfort, and health. We don't have anything like that in Thousand Oaks, and obviously CRPD doesn't have anything like that. I think if you're going to be looking at what other cities are doing, that's a worthy thing, a worthy goal. It's okay. Thank you.
1 minute.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Janet. John Bell.
Thank you. I'm John Bell. And I live in Westlake Village. I'm representing Foxmore Hills Homeowners Association. Do I get time for that as well as myself?
Represents an organization.
You Foxmore?
Foxmore Hills.
Is that in Thousand Oaks or Westlake Village?
It's
You
in
said
Westlake
Westlake
Village. We
Village.
border the Tranfo
The
Park.
city of Thousand Oaks.
Well, we're in Westlake Village. We're part of Thousand Oaks. Yes. We're Ventura
Ventura
County.
County side,
Yes, we
Thousand Oaks.
border the park.
Thousand Oaks. Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
Okay, I'm representing them tonight. This is a letter to you, Chairman Lang. Dear Chairman Lang, the Foxmore Hills Homeowners Association was recently informed that there is a recommendation for the Conejo Recreation and Park District Board of Directors to approve at their January 18th, 24 meeting, the installation of 4 trial pickleball courts on existing tennis courts at Triunfo Community Park. The FHHA also learned that local residents gathered 350 signatures in the last few weeks, including 82 Foxmore Hills residents opposing pickleball courts in Triunfo Community Park. These facts were brought to our attention by residents who attended our January 16th homeowners meeting. Neither the FHAA property manager nor any of the FHA board members received any type of notice regarding pickleball plans for Triunfo Community Park. We feel a severely inadequate community outreach by the CRPD. Pickleball has proven to be an acoustic nuisance, imposing major impacts as defined by CRPD's ordinance manual, page 5, not only on the serenity of community, but also imposing a significant risk to the mental and physical health of residents living adjacent to pickleball courts. FHAA supports many of Foxmore Hills residents who live adjacent to and directly above the proposed site who will negatively be impacted. Not only will their lives be disrupted on a daily basis due to game-related noise, but their property values will also be impacted. We do not believe that the interest of pickleball enthusiasts should be placed above the interests of our residents. Excuse me while I turn the page. In addition to the noise pollution created by the game, FHAA is also extremely concerned about the traffic impacts from the influx of people who will be playing these games hour after hour. Pickleball players drive many miles from areas outside Conejo Recreation and Park District community for whom the park serves. Triunfo Park is a community park designed to serve those who live in a 1.5 to 2 miles from the park. We believe multiple pickleball courts would be more appropriately placed in a district-wide park designated to accommodate those who live up to 30 miles from the park. Master Plan PP 4-2 through 4-3. For these reasons, Foxmore Hills Homeowners Association strongly opposes adding the proposed 4 trial pickleball courts to Triunfo Park and asks CRPD to choose another more appropriate site for pickleball trial process and potential new permanent courts.
Get about a minute.
Pardon?
You have about a minute if you want to wrap up.
Well, I also am going to speak as an individual. I'm representing myself now as an individual.
So you're not a member of the Fox Hills,
Foxmore Hills?
Foxmore Hills?
No, I live in Foxmore Hills. I'm representing the organization. Now I get to represent myself as a resident. So now, as far as putting that in, I was part of the people who went to put together the petition. And I went to all of the homes on Stonesgate Street, which is the street that runs along the edge of the hill there, and talked to all of the individuals there. And each of those homeowners, they can hear people in the park just talking when they're in the park. So you can imagine the amount of noise they're going to be getting from people when they're playing pickleball. They will be hitting it and they'll be hearing it all day long, banging away. So the noise factor is going to be tremendous. And I did a little bit of research on my own. There's an organization called Pickleball Science, and they've done a study on the acoustical research of this sport. And what they've come up with is the noise factors that come out of pickleball. And not only can you hear it straight out, but it comes up hills. It goes over the nets. And if you put up the partitions to keep the sound from going straight out, it also comes up over it. and it'll climb up the fences. It won't abate the noise factor. It goes up the hills. And not only does it go up to the homes on Stones Gate, but it'll also go up to the streets above it. And we have another street that winds up even over that. So the noise factor is not going to be abated. It's going to continue to go up the hills. And in talking to the individuals that live on Stones Gate, they hear all the noise that's coming up with it. And we have individuals up there that work out of their homes, and they're going to be hearing all of this noise coming up, as well as the ones that live down below. Now, some other factors you haven't factored in your study is the traffic. And my first home was on Triunfo Canyon Road. And that's a main road that'll be bringing people in. And that's going to be a very busy street, particularly since you have over 200 people that are interested in this court. So that's a factor you need to think about.
You
as
have
well
1 minute,
as-
please.
Pardon?
1 minute remaining.
Okay. All right, give me some time. All right. And you've got to consider that, as well as the traffic coming off the freeway. Now, I read about 6 months ago that off ramp and that intersection at the 101 is probably the worst intersection in Thousand Oaks, and biggest one that they need to do work on. So that's a factor you need to consider, is the traffic coming down out of there. Another one to consider is the environment, because at the edge of that park, it goes into the wildlife, and you've got the wildlife we need to think about. I work out once a week with my wife with a trainer right at the edge of that park.
Okay, time up.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
fine. You need to think of.
Okay, Linda Poor, that's correct.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I want to thank all the professionals here who have given their comments already. And I am a layperson, so I'm going to tell you from just my own point of view. The sound factor is very important. I live on Nettlebrook Street, which is right down from the park. And it's about 1,000 feet away. When there's a ball game in the park, when there's parties in the park, I hear the noise because of the canyon that the park is in, because of the mountains that are surrounding it. And it's fine because games last, 2-3 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and everybody goes home. Most of the houses in that area were built in the 1970s, and so most of them were not double paned. Mine is one of them. So I hear the noise and it's fine. But to hear the sound of a pickleball going from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m., which you do have avid players and they do play all day long, is something that I feel is very unreasonable. And it does hurt you both medically and physically too. Also, the report that was given, you gave the measurement of 400 feet from Triunfo to where the actual tennis court is. However, you neglected to give that there's 200 feet behind the courts that go up that hill, which is right above the tennis court. So there's houses that are less than 200 feet away that will also hear the sound that are above the courts. Then there's also east of it, there's the private gated community, which is about 400 feet away. And we all hear the sounds of the park, which is fine, but they only last for a few hours when each activity takes place. The tennis players that are there during the week. They're also there every weekend. And like this gentleman who went and visited, the tennis courts are filled up. So where the tennis players are going to play.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Okay. Also, you mentioned about the doing an environmental study. Well, you really don't have to spend $30,000. You can call up the Audubon Society and they will tell you how it impacts the birds and especially the owls. And as far as the traffic situation is concerned, you don't need a traffic study because you can call up the sheriff's department And they already have a traffic study that's done that'll tell you what the additional traffic will be. And all I'm saying is that it really should not be there because it will cause more of a nuisance, both physically and mentally, to everybody that lives in that area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lori Ellison?
So I'm Lori Watson and I'm just representing myself. I actually live the Oak Brook Neighborhood Park. I'm very nervous, so I'll try to one issue I have is this environmental study, the sound one. There's many other companies that do it and came up with many other numbers. I have from CNN, PBS, LA Times, New York Times, Realtor Investor, and two acoustic engineer companies is the information I have. I'll try to get it under 3 minutes. Overall, Sam Dogan, financialsamurai.com. He's a 20-year plus real estate investor. He's also a 4.25 level pickleball player. However, home prices decrease. If you're 50 feet from a court, your home price decreases by 10 to 20%. If you're 1 to 2 blocks away, your home value decreases 5 to 10. And that at 3 to 6 blocks, we're talking blocks, 5%. So even 1 to 2 blocks, you could lose 5 to 10% of your home. Why is that? For all the reasons people have been saying. I hear it and I hear it said in a tone, well, what's all the big deal about this noise? Well, there are hundreds and hundreds of lawsuits across the country, and those are the people that have the ability to retain a lawyer, which I don't. Their feet is not 100 feet, 150 feet. CNN Business, Massachusetts lawsuit, 350 feet is
Lori, could you
per.
please wrap it up, please?
Okay, Bob Unitech Pickleball Sound Mitigation Advisors consults with municipalities, golf clubs, and are in California. He is also a pickleball player. Their recommendations 977 feet.
Okay, please.
I have one more.
Go ahead.
Because I'm also taking up her time. She wouldn't talk. Okay, LA Times, lawsuit in Newport Beach. It's 100 yards, which is 300 feet. Goleta is 200 yards, 600 feet. Decibels at 50 feet is 85 decibels. So it's not just the homeowners, it's the people walking in the park, the children, the dogs, the people. 80 decibels can cause hearing damage. Pickleball causes 85 decibels at 50 feet. 80 decibels is the equivalent of a freight train going by you at 50 feet away. A blender is at 88. So pickleball
I'm
is
going to
at
have to
85.
ask you to
Thank
wrap
you.
up. Thank you very much. We also had a comment card on both sides, and I've asked the general manager if he would summarize the written comments.
Okay, we have a written statement card from Ann Walker on behalf of herself and her family, who opposes the pickleball courts at the Oak Brook Neighborhood Park.
Thank you. All right, board members,
Oh, we have online.
Oh, we have it online now? Okay, go ahead.
Gus? Gus. Gus, if you're interested in speaking, this is your opportunity. Okay.
What's the conclusion?
Anybody else online? So yeah, to be clear, if you're online and wish to speak, you need to raise your hand so our moderator can add you, open you up. Anyone? Okay.
All right, that concludes the comments from the public. At this time, I'm going to ask the board for additional comments and possible recommendations. Director,
Oh, you go ahead. Oh, you go ahead.
oh, go ahead, Director Bus.
Okay. I want to say thank you to everyone who participated today. I appreciate you coming out here and caring about your community so much. I personally live in a home that backs a canyon in Lynn Ranch. I look across to Rancho Conejo. I can tell you when the coyotes get their kill, it sounds like they're literally in my backyard, and I know they are on the valley floor. So I have to assure my children they will not be coming up to kill our dogs. So I understand your concerns at Triumpho Park. I'm also a real estate professional in the area, and I'm very, very familiar with trying to sell homes that back noisy things, schools, commercial areas, freeways. And as much as I don't think it affects your value as some of the articles have stated, it does affect your buyer pool. So you have less people who are interested in buying your home. So, and my office is off the Hampshire Road exit. And yes, it took me 3 lights to get off of it just the other day for my board meeting. So I understand the concern with the traffic, and also we have Tio Ranch that is being built there, which is several hundred units. So I don't think that the Triumpho Community Park for me is one that I think should be considered personally. I feel bad for the pickleball players in our community because I understand that there is such a passion, and I understand that there is the feeling that they won't be able to play forever as they are aging. But I feel like our community needs to find locations, and they may not be locations that are already developed and easy to just put stripes on and put up nets and provide for you. But I really feel like long-term, it would be better for us to find locations that maybe we have to spend more time to develop and it is more costly, but doesn't affect the neighborhoods around them. So I just want to say, you know, one of the why we all pay these lovely prices to live here in this area is because we have beautiful weather and we are able to live with our windows open all the time. I mean, pretty much all the time. So I appreciate all of your concerns, but for me, in Estella Park, this is a rental community. That's why we don't have people here speaking out. And I just feel like I can't really support any of these at this point. I feel like we kind of have to go back to the drawing board, and I feel really bad for the pickleball community because I do appreciate everything that you guys have done and how much support you guys have brought and been here and gave us so much feedback through all of our budget meetings. But I just feel like these 3 are not the best opportunity for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bus. Director Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have one more question for staff. If the courts, the tennis courts at Triumpho were converted to pickleball, how would that affect our current tennis programming?
So typically we program the court that we wouldn't be doing the trial on. However, from a long term to develop additional courts, we would not at this time be making a recommendation to have multi-stripe courts because of the use at Trampo, from what we've heard and from outreach and such.
So whatever current programming is occurring would remain regardless during the trial period?
Correct. That is my understanding, that it's on the other court, and then the two other courts are typically used for just drop-in play.
Okay, all right. Thank you. As I mentioned briefly when I was asking a few questions, I was in opposition to the Triumphal Park location when it was considered as a priority, and I still remain opposed to it for the same reason, because of the noise. And I just felt that obviously with the resounding input from our community in that area, there's a lot of opposition there. And it'd be interesting to hear even a good pickleball player is concerned about the noise in that area. So I appreciate that. So I really think that we're trying to emphasize that parks reflect their community. And if just as if the neighbors in that region where there was 30 or 40 years ago, 50 years ago, they didn't want a community center, and now they're saying we don't want a pickleball, I'd say we obviously they know what they want, they know what they don't want, and we need to respect that. So I'm opposed to having a pickleball included within Triumphal Park. And as far as Estella, I mentioned my concerns about parking, and also the fact that we've got 10 feet to the nearest house. And as you mentioned, you know, it's a little different community there. I also don't support adding pickleball there. I even thought maybe we should just eliminate the court altogether that close, but maybe at least I think we should have some sound barriers there regardless. But I also don't support the use of Estella for pickleball. And as far as Oak Brook, you know, it seems like isn't be a very simple use. Just say, hey, we're going to just convert the use of netball because it's not really being used. But one of the concerns that I have is it really is just a neighborhood park. And as I've heard the input from our pickleball community, and as was hinted to before, you know, having 4, 6 or more pickleball courts is really ideal because of the social nature of the sport, and really trying to, you know, kind of bring folks together. And as I was over there at Rancho Conejo on Monday, I mean, it's a jovial crowd. They're having a blast over there, and you know, just, you know, talking. I think they're there as much for just talking and sharing as they are for playing. You know, and so there's, as I was approaching the pickleball courts, I mean, I could hear the pickleballs, but I mean, it was just that rumble of conversation as well. You know, it's just a very good conversation. You know, nothing against them. But as I thought about that, you know, really having read what I've read, having heard what I've heard, and kind of mulling it all around, it seems that we really need to think more as a complex. Just, you know, we need 6 courts, 4 or 6 courts somewhere, and play fields seem to be the best location for that. You know, not in certainly not in a neighborhood park. Community parks potentially, but it kind of depends. You know, Triumpho's within a neighborhood. You know, Thousand Oaks Community Park is kind of off by itself. Orchard Park, somewhat. Dos Vientos, somewhat. They don't really have those neighbors immediately adjacent to them. But you know, Triumphos, it's almost like a neighborhood park masquerading as a community park, or vice versa. So it's a little bit different there. You know, Oak Brook is out by itself, kind of still in its growing phases. You know, some of the trees are still maturing. I think the sound will carry even more across over there. Kind of in between, or maybe as a trial basis, maybe it would be worthwhile. But I certainly wouldn't want to see it there as on a permanent basis. It's kind of the conclusion I've come, is they're really looking more for a complex setting where a site that would accommodate 4 to 6 courts in an area that's away from homes. So I don't think I can support the 3 parks proposed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Nagel. Director Huffer.
First of all, I do want to thank everybody for coming out this evening, and expressing not just your interest, but your passion for your neighborhood, for your sport. I was glad that we had speakers from both sides, if you will, although I hate to refer to it as sides. We're all part of this community. We all love this community. But I did appreciate hearing from a couple of people supporting pickleball, maybe not necessarily in a specific location, but their love for pickleball. I don't recall who the speaker was, but one of you was talking about making, if we do this, making sure that courts are available, that reservations aren't taken. I don't want to speak for the recreation department, but I don't think during the trial that we would be doing any reservations, because this is just a suggested trial program. Yes, pickleball is growing. I've already read several colleges that are looking at or have already added pickleball as a club sport. Whether it ever becomes an interscholastic sport, I don't know. But I remember when we first, even 2.5, 3 years ago, when we first started talking about this, everyone said, well, it's just an old people's sport. Well, it's not. There are people of all ages. So the popularity is there. Comments were made about the hours. Again, I don't want to speak for the sports department, but 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., I don't know of any of our parks that we have going anywhere close to 10 p.m. I know the soccer fields, I believe they close down at 8 or 8:30. They cannot start games until 8 o'clock on Saturday and 9 o'clock on Sunday. So the 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. that's not really an issue in my opinion. And I would be surprised if there are pickleball people out there, even if it was 8 to 8. I'd be surprised if there are people out there for 12 hours, 7 days a week. Maybe it happened. I don't know. That's one of the things you might determine through a trial period. Several people, including board members, said, well, we should put this in a district-wide park. Well, there are a limited number of district-wide parks, and they're all already being heavily used. One of the items that we had on our agenda tonight was usage at some of our park sites. People said, well, Conejo Creek South, there's all that parking lot, there's all that grass there, turn some of those into pickleball courts. Well, according to the numbers that we've seen that our sports department provided for us, just in the last 6 months, 1 million people use Conejo Creek South. I don't know the numbers, but Conejo Creek North, which is one of our other big district-wide parks, the usage there, I'm sure, is at least in the hundreds of thousands. Now, a lot of these are the same people coming back day after day after day, but these are heavily used parks. And in the case of Conejo Creek North, unless we were to tear down some of the picnic structures, which are extremely popular, remove some of the playgrounds, which are constantly in use, there's really no practical way of putting in pickleball courts without taking out existing amenities. And that's the problem that we have with a lot of our park sites, is that there are existing amenities, existing programs, whether it's baseball, soccer, football. If we were to add pickleball courts to these areas, that's going to help the pickleballers, but it's going to hurt people from other sports. And we really want to avoid that if at all possible. So those were some of the issues that were brought up. The 3 sites, Estella, I personally don't think that we're really doing anything different there than we're already doing, other than maybe having a pair of pickleball nets available that aren't available now. But people who are avid pickleballers bring their own nets, so it's been used. All right, we're not proposing a sound study. We're not proposing any restriping or anything else at Estella. I don't see that anything particular is being done, but if that was removed from the study, I wouldn't have any heartburn with that. Triunfal Park, that's where virtually all the opposition tonight, with the exception of our one speaker card, comes from. The reason I, as a member of the pickleball committee, felt that Triunfal was a good location was first because of the size, second because
There is parking, though admittedly, if 4 or 6 courts were put in there permanently somewhere down the road, it's not going to happen next week or next month. But if additional courts were put in there, maybe there would be some issues with parking. There might be space to increase some parking, but parking is an issue, traffic is an issue. The noise, that's the primary purpose for this 6-month study, is to try to determine, yeah, we have all these articles from someplace else, whether it's from British Columbia or from Colorado or from wherever it might be, but we're talking about the Conejo Valley. And we're talking about a specific location within Conejo Valley. Is the noise in that specific location indeed a problem, or is it not? We don't know until we try it. All right. That said, and I hate to, I don't want to say give in, but I've been involved with just go off track for a moment, involved with youth soccer for years and years. So, some of you are familiar with Conejo Creek South and the soccer fields there. The gentleman said that you were involved with Conejo Creek South. Years ago, there was a lot of opposition to expanding the soccer fields there. There was opposition to putting in additional better lighting at the soccer fields. With some modifications, the Park District went ahead and did it. And as I said, we now have hundreds of thousands of kids and parents and grandparents who are using the fields, not just for soccer, but for other field sports almost year round, other than when we're refurbishing the fields. So I've been through this process of public opposition to adding or expanding facilities within the Park District. But the opposition that I saw and heard at Conejo Creek South was nowhere near the level of opposition that we're hearing from Triunfo. But much as I hate to do this, because I still think Triunfo is a great location, got the space. We're not talking about permanently restriping tennis courts. We're talking about adding pickleball courts, and we still have existing tennis courts. But it's only for the 6-month study that we would be looking at restriping existing tennis courts, but that's not the long-range plan. But given, I don't want to say the fierce opposition, but certainly the almost unanimous opposition that we're hearing from residents of Triunfo, and having been a part of this committee for 2.5 years where I supported Triunfo all along, I'm going to have to pull my support for Triunfo. And I really hate to do that, but I've had too many emails and letters and conversations from people say, you don't listen to the community. Yes, we do listen to the community. That's why we have public hearings like this. That's why we went out to Triunfo and to Oak Brook and to all these other parks and listened to what people were saying. We do listen. All right. And what I'm hearing, much as I hate to do this, is there is too much opposition to even looking at pickleball for Triunfo. So I'm not going to be able to support Triunfo as one of the 3 trial sites. We've heard one bit of opposition on Oak Brook. As far as location, I don't think Oak Brook is as ideally located as Triunfo, because it's more central Thousand Oaks. We still would have no pickleball facilities for the eastern half of the community, which I think is a real shame. If anybody knows of some vacant land down there where we could put in pickleball courts, let us know, but we don't have any such land. All right. If the school district or a company or somebody has some empty land, let Andrew know. We'd be happy to talk to him about putting in pickleball courts. I still think we need pickleball in the eastern part of our district, but based on the feedback that we've received, not just here tonight, but through the petition and emails and all the phone calls that the Park District has been getting, I would have to whole support for Triumpho. I will support the idea of continuing the study or having the study at Oak Brook for 6 months as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Huffer. Director Cussworth.
So I was never interested in the Triumpho location. It seemed to me that the park was too small. The roads going into it were too small. It was a smaller it was a smaller park surrounded by houses. And it just didn't seem like an ideal location, other than that there were tennis courts there that were always being played on. So I didn't feel that it was a good site, and perhaps they had chose it before it was known that Westlake was going to be building 4 courts, and Oak Park has just built 4 courts in Deer Hill. So I think that that section of our community is taken care of. Also, I back up to a fairly busy road, and the only thing I don't like about my house is that the backyard is somewhat noisy, and it's traffic noise. Once you're out there, it kind of sounds like the ocean. So it's not so bad really, but it still bothers me because, it kind of get, but it still bothers me. And so I can only imagine how annoying, having some other type of annoying noise going when the noise in my backyard isn't really that noisy. So I was never in favor of Triumpho. And then of course, we do listen to the community. So thank you for your input. It did make an effect. Estella has been a pickleball court for a very long time. All they would be doing is adding nets. And like I said, a couple of years ago, there was a net there that my husband and I would go play at. But I think it got destroyed with futsal. I'm assuming that's how it got destroyed. I don't know. So I don't think that many people play pickleball at Estella because of the parking issue. And also, the pickleball people have consistently told us that they like to have pickleball where a lot of people can come, and you can't do that at Estella. So I think Estella would never get that many people coming. It might just be a couple or a foursome or whatever might go over there and play occasionally. And it's really not changing anything than it has been for several years. So I'm not saying we should take away the amenity at Estella. It's been there. I think it could stay there and put in some nets and see if that, if that causes too much noise or it's a problem, then hopefully the people that live there would complain or say that too many people are coming there. But because of the parking situation, I think that's going to be just more of a private party pickleball place. With Oak Brook, it's centrally located in Thousand Oaks, and I think that that's very good. It does have good access with 2 fairly busy roads there, and it does have fairly good parking and off-street parking that's not in front of a house. The only problem that I see with Oak Brook is I don't think it could ever be expanded there, because then it would become way too noisy. So if we're trying to look at a park, which is what the pickleball people want, of having a larger complex, I don't think we're going to be putting 6 to 12 or 8 pickleball courts there at Oak Brook. And I went to Rancho Conejo one time, and I stood at a pickleball area and I walked out as far as I could until I stopped hearing the pickleball noise. And it's when I got closer to a road. And then I went over to Oak Brook and walked out that same amount of difference, because I wasn't as worried about the houses per se, but about the atmosphere of the park, because it's a very used park with a lot of people there with their kids and their scooters and their soccer and it's a very much of a neighborhood park. Now, we wouldn't know how noisy it's going to be at that park unless there was a trial. I would admit that. We don't know if it would substantially affect the park unless there was a trial. So I could see a trial being put there, but I don't know that I don't know that it would be a good place, and I don't know that we could ever expand it more than those 2 courts. So it's not really what the pickleball people want, and I don't think it's what the neighborhood wants. I'm not completely against it though, for a trial basis. And then would want to hear back from the neighbors. But definitely not Triumpho. So, and I'm not completely sold on Oak Brook either. But I do understand that the Park Service does want to at least get a feeling for what this is like. And I think we need to find something else. And I'm grateful to Camarillo. So thank you for coming out and thank you for your input.
Thank you, Director Cuthbert. And thank you all board members for your input, your thoughts and so forth. It's very valuable in making a decision. And to hear our two ad hoc committee members for pickleball, hearing their comments and their subsequent thoughts, because that was one of the important parts of my decision, looking at all the information, is what our committee fellow board members stated. And to hear their comments tonight and so forth in light of all the information we now have that we didn't have when this ad hoc committee may have been started and our park district considering it. I don't think, and Andrew might know, that we knew of the additional pickleball courts that Camarillo and Westlake, et cetera, and that Oak Park also are contemplating building, et cetera. I don't believe we had the information. We had a need that we had to fill, and we want to fill totally, but I don't think we knew of all of the additional pickleball courts that are, currently being contemplated. So we have new information now before making this decision, I think is very important. So at this time, based on comments by board members and so forth, would anybody like to make a motion or recommendation one way or the other? Director Huffer.
I would like to move approval of staff recommendation 1, that whatever trial program we do, the categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. Again, this is a temporary trial. It's not permanent. If and when permanent courts were put in, that's a whole different issue. So I would move approval of that staff recommendation. Recommendation 2. I'm not sure about including Estella as a trial, but I would modify that to adding the permanently available pickleball nets for Estella. That's the extent of what we'd be doing there. And authorizing the use of Oak Brook Neighborhood Park for the 6-month trial pickleball.
Thank you, Director Huffer. Do we have a second to that motion?
Could I just ask for a clarification?
Sure.
I didn't hear your comments, if any, about Triumphal Park.
I am not including Triumpho in my motion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that clarification, is there a second to the motion? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion in reference to? Yes, Director Huffer.
Just a comment, since we're in the discussion comment period. Yes, there are pickleball courts that will be available in Westlake. Yes, there are pickleball courts that will be available in Camarillo. I feel very badly that we're suggesting that our residents who are paying taxes and fees to our district we're suggesting to them that they go someplace else to play pickleball. I think it's a shame. But if we can't build our own pickleball courts, that's the best we can do for our community. But I think it's a shame. I know when COVID hit,
and all the trails and everything were closed down in Los Angeles County. People were coming out here. Sure, we let them, not let them, they used our trails. We maybe resented it. They messed them up and they took advantage of our staff and our resources. I would hate to have the same thing happening with our residents going to Westlake or Camarillo or someplace else where there are pickleball courts. So my motion stands, but I'm disappointed that we're suggesting that we're sending our residents someplace else.
Well, I personally know, and I'm assuming others know, that we have residents from all over Southern California going to our Wildwood Park, using our dog park from Camarillo, Calabasas. So people go to where their needs can be fulfilled. And at this point, we cannot provide permanently make a decision to provide pickleball courts. So I have no problem in knowing that there's other communities that are in a different position than we are, that are, I see your hand, that are able to exercise, have fun, camaraderie, etc. I'm hearing where there's pickleball complexes, if I say complexes because it's more than 4, 5, 6 courts, that have created community gathering places, coffee houses, beer gardens, etc. So it's a great draw for people to get to gather and have fun and exercise and so forth. So if you're providing that type of amenity, I don't see any reason why others can't take advantage of it. Director Cussworth.
I think we should also take into consideration that we've been ahead of the game in pickleball and that we've had more pickleball courts in our community than a lot of surrounding communities. And now they're building pickleball courts, and that may alleviate some of our courts, hopefully. So we have been providing pickleball courts for a lot of surrounding communities. They're now building pickleball courts. They may not be using ours as much. And hopefully in the future, we can somehow work something out that we can build some more better suited pickleball courts than we can do right now.
Thank you. Director Buss.
I do not think that we shouldn't continue to look for a place for the pickleball courts, but as the email that we received from Catherine Nolan, who I believe is the president of the Pickleball Association out here, they want 6 courts together. They don't want 1 court at Estella. They don't want 2 courts at Triumpho. They want 6 courts. And I think that unfortunately for them, we can't provide that even in these trials, but we can look for a place, and hopefully maybe in the budget in 3 or 4 years, we have the money to really build something maybe over by the freeway, by the dog park at, the Conejo Northwest Park we're looking at. So I do want to provide for the community. I just think that unfortunately, we can't move it up to year 1 and 2 budget as they wanted us to do when they came and were trying to get us to provide them now. And providing them these just doesn't even give them what they want. So I'm fully in favor of us pursuing it. I just think that this is not the solution and that we do need to provide for our community and look further into this.
Thank you, Director Buss. Any other comments? Yes, Director Nichols.
Thank you. I did have one more question if I could have staff, if that's okay. Mr. Mooney, if the Oak Brook netball court is really not actively used as netball, and if it were not converted to pickleball, what other use could that court serve?
Typically, we don't have like an additional like basketball court. It could just be left open concrete if we don't do something with it. Like right now, it's not being utilized for netball. But like you mentioned, and I witnessed myself, people like to, learn how to ride a bike or roller skate or do other things or fitness classes, that type of stuff. So it does serve a purpose currently. However, because pickleball is a concern of the public, that's why we suggested that. So we could look into other uses is my point.
Okay.
So,
But nothing
There's nothing
pressing at this point.
currently, there's nothing pressing. Pickleball is
Okay.
the only interest of courts.
Okay. Requesting a friendly amendment if I could regarding Estella Park. I would agree there's not much change there. But would you also consider in your motion to add barriers, the sound barriers along those two walls?
Staff felt that that was, would make a significant difference. Since we're looking at a original budget of, I don't know, what, $40,000 or $50,000. If we're not spending that money, then perhaps that money could be repurposed. For sound barriers, I have no idea what that cost might be, and whether, since the courts are so close, whether that would really make a significant difference or not.
Yeah, so staff can take a look at that and see if it fits within our operational budget, but it's going to be a little bit different. We know the Hillcrest property is going to be developed into 76 units, residential units, so the northwest corner of that property. So whether we do 2 sides, 3 sides, or 4 sides, it's going to be a significant cost to do that. However, we could talk with our environmental consultant, maybe kind of discuss a little bit to see the importance of it. Because of the close proximity, it might not have a major impact where you notice a big drop off on it. So, but staff can consider and take a look at that, but I can't really commit to one way or the other since I don't know the cost of it. So, and I would like to do it once properly versus coming back and doing multiple phases. And it would be something new to the district. So that's something I would like to talk to maintenance staff about, because yeah, you might have sound barriers, it might work, but then we might have rodent issues, we might have graffiti issues. And how do we maintain that for the long term of the improvement? We have to take that in consideration.
Okay.
So.
All right.
If I could then, Director Lang, your request or suggestion for amendment, I am not going to change my motion to that effect.
Okay.
That's what I was gonna try and work out here. So, that specific item will not be part of the motion. Okay. Any other comments or questions come to mind? If not, we do have a motion, and Elaine, would you please read the motion for clarification?
Director Huffer recommends that we do put in at Estella Park, adding the permanent nets, and also authorize use of Oak Brook Neighborhood Park for the 6-month trial.
That sound right, Director Hoover?
Did you, I missed, did you include the part 1 sequence, that it's exempt from sequence?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Ready to vote? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Hearing none, motion fails, 3-2 vote. And again, thank you, everybody, for showing up and presenting your thoughts and feelings and likes and dislikes. That's how we operate. We're moving on to item 10, reports and announcements.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Sir Chair, could there be an opportunity for a second motion to follow up? Do we only have to do it as a single motion that fails, end the discussion?
Mr. General Manager?
Yeah, no, if somebody's got an idea that sort of is in this realm, for sure, yeah.
Okay, I would like to make a motion then that we strike both Triumpho and first accept the CEQA determination. Secondly, strike both Triumpho and Estella, and then conditionally approved Oak Brook Neighborhood Park for the 6-month trial.
I'm sorry, Director Nichols, that was the basis of my motion, and the motion failed 3-2.
No, but you said we include Estella. He's taking Estella out.
Thank you. And with the understanding that it was a 6-month study for Oak Brook Park, strictly to get sound, in my mainly for sound, for our own purposes, and that it's only for a 6-month study, and that all the temporary improvements would be removed at 6 months, and that there would be no intention of adding any more than 2 courts in the future. So that's my modified motion.
So you're making a new motion,
Yes.
okay? Read that one more time, please.
Accept the,
I'm sorry.
No, Director Nicola, I'm sorry.
accept the CEQA determination, and then for as far as the authorization for trial pickleball courts, strike Triunfo, strike Estella, and Oak Brook for a 6-month trial only, so we can primarily conduct sound studies for our own purposes within our own Conejo Valley area. And that all the temporary improvements would be removed afterwards. And that at the conclusion, I know the staff had considered that maybe in the future, possibly 4 courts could be there, but that it would never be 4, that it would only ever be 2 at most in the future. That would be my modified, my motion.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? Lack of a second, motion fails.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving on to item 10, reports and announcements, 10A through H. I'd like to discuss 10A, the recreation highlights. Are there any other items that the board would like to comment on? Okay. Okay. Any other items want to be discussed besides A? Yes.
Chuck, could you turn on your mic?
And
I'm sorry. 10D, I found the reservation summary. I had no idea the numbers were that big, and the tens of thousands of Pepper Tree, over 75,000 users, and that's just a 6-month period. A number of our sites 10 to 15,000, and then since I'm there all the time, the fact that Conejo Creek South just in 6 months had more than 1 million visitors. I knew it was busy there. I didn't realize it was that busy. So thank you for all those numbers. That's fascinating.
okay, yes.
I just had a
Director
question.
Nichols.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a question on that same chart, page 95, the facilities reservations. I noticed Oak Brook neighborhood Park had significant permits and visitors in July and August of 23, and nothing after that. I just was curious as to what was the draw for July and August.
That's a good question. I would assume summer months. I don't know if the city did a couple things there or not, so I'll have to look into that and find out why there were specific reservations there.
All right, thank you.
Actually, I think I may know.
You know the answer?
Yeah, I think
tap
Oak
there.
Brook is sort of the fallback field when a lot of the other fields are down for
rain
refurb.
for-
So like basically we shut a lot of the fields down for refurb, and so then we use Oak Brook as sort of we do have somewhere you can go.
Okay.
So they kind of are a catch-all for the time when all the big fields are down.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you.
Okay, any other board members want to make comments? I'm going to make a couple of quick comments on item A of the Recreation Community Services report. And starting off with our own polar bear here at the on the dais. The good
Picture.
it's a good photo, Mr. Huffer. And I'm thankful that you participated. And if I was younger, I might have been out there joining you.
I'm thankful that there wasn't a lifeguard saving me in that picture. So
The other question, in reference to the report, Conejo Creek Teen Club, how many members are there in total? That's on page 81.
I want to say they're in the teen club, they're seeing between 20 and 35 teens at the Conejo Creek Teen Club now.
Okay,
It's actually, it has grown.
that's good to
Mhm.
see for sure. And then the last, no, it isn't going to be the last one. Just on the Silver Starlight Ball, I think all of the board members were present. Right? No, that's right. You were Hawaii,
No, I was in Seattle.
Seattle.
Hawaii would be a good excuse. Seattle.
Anyway, as usual, it's a great event. And also appreciate how much that band provides this whole event, they just make it. And participants look forward to that every year. So that is a great event. And have we recognized that band before with some kind of award? Or I would like to see if there's some kind of recognition and make a full presentation here at one of our board meetings. It's they really contributed a lot, and they've been doing it every year, if I recall correctly. The other comment on page 83 about the blast or babysitting training, it looks like that's very successful and they have a lot of participants. And I'm just curious, do we have any feedback from the users, the parents that utilize this babysitting? Are there satisfaction? Is there a rating or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, it's a class for the kids to get experience for them to use. But like CRPD doesn't approve that they're like the best babysitter and they know everything. So it's a class to improve their skills and give them some self-confidence in babysitting. So, and then I think this company gives them like a little certificate because it's not our staff that teach the class.
So obviously, we're doing a good service and providing a good training, and very key to our community having that resource. Okay, that concludes my thoughts and comments. Anything else on their reports and announcements? Yes, Director Buss.
Yeah, I want to say the lighting was so much better at the Starlight Gala. I really appreciate that as I age, softer lighting. Thank you. And then I do have a question about the youth outreach program. I noticed that for the middle school and elementary school was added. They have Walnut Elementary School on here. I was just curious why that school, and because that's not technically a middle school. I'm just,
You're correct. Good catch.
yeah, no, I was just
I
curious,
don't-
like, are we,
That's gotta be the wrong, I want to say that's,
yeah, because
a
we only have
different school.
4 middle schools,
yeah.
unless, I don't even think that, yeah, because there's not like a Conejo Valley, like continuation middle school. There's only the 4.
Unless they called and asked us to do something there, I'll have to find out from Dan.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
We're doing it in elementary school too. I mean, that's cool.
No. nothing.
Okay, that was it. That was my only question. Thank you.
I will get back to you on that.
Thank you, Director Buss and Ms. Callis. Let's move on to item 11, department reports. 11A, Parks Division, Mr. Mooney.
No report, but I'm available for questions.
Any questions of Mr. Mooney? Yes, Director Huffer.
Yeah, I can't remember if I read someplace, but do we have a date yet for the ribbon cutting at Conejo Creek North?
We do not have a date. We've kind of been in between a little bit of wetness out there in the ground. So we're trying to, and Rebecca could have been added to it if she's walked out. But last I remember, we're probably about through this week, at least one more week of construction. And then we'll be doing some final inspections and review. So say February sometime, but we'll reach out once we finish, and then we'll schedule. So probably sometime in February, late February.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Huffer. No further questions for Park Division. Moving on to 11B, Recreation Division Report, Ms. Callis.
Thank you, Charlene. Members of the board. So a couple of things just to let you know, we are going to be recognizing the CLU women's soccer team for their great accomplishments the last month or so. We're going to be doing that on February 15th. So we'll have the whole team in here with the coaches, just so you know. Also in your packet, our presentation tonight from Juliet and Kellen, as they had mentioned, was just about the things that we do at Conejo Community Center. So I just thought I'd remind you, and I put in your packet the information that Charlene makes for other things that we do with the school district, just so that you can have that. And then James made a, not James, I keep thinking it's James, but it's Charlene is so good at her job. She actually made this annual impact report. And I don't know if you guys noticed it, but you all should have gotten an email. It was kind of an update email. It went out to all of the people we have email addresses on. So over 50,000 people, and the staff emails that we have also. This was one of the items. So it just has a lot of really good information kind of summarizing what happened for us in 2023. And then lastly, the Wellness Fest, I think Nellie, you went, but it was, Doug, I didn't see you, I'm sorry. But it was awesome. It was so good. So I'll let you guys report out on that, but just, the staff there, Julie and Patty and Mike and the whole staff team did a great job. So just a shout out to them on that. With that, I'm available for questions.
Any questions, Director Kessworth?
I think I got that paper, the Charlene paper.
This one?
That one.
You
I don't
returned
see
a
it.
folder to me and this was in it.
What? I didn't get it. Oh, I gave it back to you.
Yes.
Okay, in the folder. Okay, thank you. Also, I noticed that the backyard block party. Oh, I noticed that the backyard block party you said was a huge success. And I know that it was kind of hard getting teens back to the teen center after COVID and then it being under construction. Are you seeing a lot more kids coming out to your activities now? Is that going to be a trend?
I think it's that in the fact that sorry, that the staff was able to plan it and get some kids there. They had about 60. When I was there, I think I counted about 60 kids there. So I think it was, it's slow. And that wasn't the backyard. That was the, are you talking about the backyard that happened several months ago or
I'm
the
just
New
looking at one
Year's?
that's right here. And so it was October 7th. It was just saying,
Oh, that one was good. That was good in October, and that was the backyard one. And that
Yeah.
had a decent amount of kids at, and they actually have another one coming up. So it's being advertised.
okay.
So we are seeing more kids starting to come. New Year's was good, not great, but good.
So we are seeing an upward trend.
We're seeing more. What's
Maybe.
hard is the open gym, like the open time where you can just come and hang out. That's not very busy. The programs are doing really well that they're offering. So they're offering things that the kids really want to do. And then the backyard stuff is ticking up a little more than the dances. So I don't know if it's just a trend change or.
Yeah, I
or
was
what,
wondering, because
but-
when I talked to my son and when he was in middle school, he said you could barely move in
Right,
there.
yeah,
for
that is not
those.
the case right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was also wondering, I thought it was interesting that it said we're getting more requests for STEM classes. I think
Yes.
that was in the whole little
Oh.
survey. So
Yeah.
is that new, or is this parents that are requesting the STEM classes, or are the kids saying? Because I remember when we went to one sort of a roundhouse, that's what the kids that I was talking to were saying they wanted more of that. But of course, these were the kids that were on the teen commission. So I was wondering about that. Where are we getting these requests for the STEM classes?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit of both. They're into the Legos and the math and that kind of stuff. So there are some of the STEM classes that are becoming more popular, the engineering, the building, the blowing up the soda bottle, those types of
Okay.
things. So
Well,
they're-
that's kind of cool if the kids are
Yeah.
kind of wanting to go towards that. So I
Yeah.
thought that was
yeah,
great.
dance it's the socialization part of it that's a little harder.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kessworth. Any other comments or questions for our Recreation Division? If not, 11C, Management Services Division, Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Chair and members. I will be brief. We're in audit land, so we have our final CRPD audit documents, and thank you for making yourselves available for the 30th for us to review that with the Finance and Audit Committee along with our reserves. So that's happening. And then the auditors have actually been here all week doing the MRCA audit. So we're audits all the time. And then also thank you all and Aline for corralling folks for the 30th. To have our closed session on the class and comp update for you all. So thank you all, and that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Smith? Okay, item 11D, General Manager's Report. Mr. Friedel.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Lang and members of the board. I think before I have a few things to tick off, I do want to thank and compliment the board, the ad hoc committee, the board and staff on a process that should not feel like it wasn't successful, because I do think that was actually really successful, because it's been really hard to find a location, and part of the focus on pickleball has been cost effective, sort of like can we do stuff in a more cost effective way that maybe the right thing is to start looking in the commercial industrial properties for a kind of a use like that. It just will mean that land values would, drive up the cost to do something like that. But, to do the right kind of facility in the right location, that's might be what we need to do. And that'll be something I think we start to look harder at, is basically take the idea that we have to already own the property to find the right location, or maybe if we do have property, is it already on the freeway, that kind of thing. So I think this actually is, since it was a 3-year process, it spans 2 different boards, 2 different ad hoc committees, 2 different administrators of parks and planning. So it was an evolution to get to a point where I think we can really make sure that we're focusing on areas that can handle the noise from pickleball, and we'll do that. So anyway, that I just want to say, Andrew, great, thorough, long researched options there. So I appreciate everybody's energy and effort on that journey. And then in just ticking off some things, Conejo Canyon Bridge down in Wildwood, connecting Conejo Canyons and Wildwood, Western Plateau and Wildwood. So right now, mark on your calendar, if you would, Thursday, March 28th at 10 a.m. or as a backup, Friday, April 5th at 3 p.m. as potential ribbon cuttings. And these are kind of coming through the city right now. They're the primary funder and contractor of the bridge. We're certainly very involved, but those are the tentative ribbon cutting days right now. On 3/28, Thursday 3/28, it's 10 a.m. and Friday 4/5, it's 3 p.m. And so I don't know that either one of those is completely 100% fixed, but those are the 2 dates they gave me.
Well, if we have Aline keep us in tune of what's happening with the city, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, yep. And they're looking for our availability. So if one of you guys has I'm out of town, or on one of those days, let me know, okay? Because the city is looking for us to be available too. All right, check your calendars. We'll follow up with an email. Tuesday 1:30 special meet. Oh, you mentioned that we're having our special meeting at Tuesday 1:30 at 4. Appreciate that. I did want to mention the Momentum for All ribbon cutting that we went to yesterday. It's the renamed United Cerebral Palsy Group. They have that amazing facility. I think they picked it up when we were asking about that building, it was 23 mil. I heard between the improvements and getting in, I'm hearing it's a 30 million investment. So, and it's, for people with, mobility and mobility challenges and disabilities. And it's amazing. It's fantastic. And what's really exciting is tomorrow, the therapeutic unit, Rochelle and I are going to go meet with them to just talk about what can we do together, partnerships, things we could do together with our therapeutic program and what they do. So hopefully it'll lead to something, but we're meeting with their COO tomorrow. So pretty excited about that. And then on Monday, I'm meeting with Supervisor Gorell and his staff to just, what I had heard is they got into their offices and they don't have any leftover subject matter files from, one supervisor to the next. So they basically said, we don't even know what, your issues or park issues might be over time. So I have a list of about 10 or 15 things I was going to go over them from issues that we've dealt with, county parks and park issues and thing is it's just going to be kind of a 1 hour. Here's kind of the things we've been working on. And is there anything we can do together with you in your offices? So that's it.
It's good to have those channels open.
Yeah. So looking forward to that.
Right. Okay, any questions of our general manager and his report? If not, thank you. And I think that exploring the opportunities between our therapeutic unit and the new cerebral palsy group is really a positive. So look forward to hearing some of the results of your meeting. Okay, going on to item 11E, director's reports and follow-up reports on meetings and conferences attended. Who would like to start? Director Cusworth.
Oh, okay. I was pointing to.
I know you were, but I was asking you.
So yes, I was at the Wellness Fest and it was really amazing. Really good turnout. I got there a little bit late, but I still feel I saw most of it. Only Julie told me she added a whole nother nonprofit section, which I didn't see. And I really enjoyed the nonprofit section because a lot of just the main hall dealt with a lot of things that I'm not ready to deal with yet. I'm still too young for that. But at the nonprofit, had a long conversation with the cremation man. But
They pull up in front of your house and
anyway, but also they had CLU there with a lot of programs that I would be interested in. So, but the nonprofit section was really interesting to me. So I'm glad that there was a good mix and a great turnout, and they really had it decorated up cute. I mean, the people did a great job, the staff did. And then I was at Momentum yesterday and I was highly impressed. In fact, I got there a little bit late, so I stayed a little later than everyone else and sat at the table with this man who seemed to have some in with people. Anyway, I went with him and some guides and we went all upstairs and saw all of did either of you go there? Saw all the construction that they were doing upstairs, and they had lights up there, which the fellow I was with was saying, why are lights up here? And I go, oh, they're just working like almost 24/7 to get this building done. And it's going to be regional offices. But I went inside the pool. I don't think, did you guys go into the pool? So went into the pool and saw that. It's a huge pool. It's a gorgeous facility. And they're going to make, one whole side of it so that it's wheelchair access. So I guess they'll get waterproof wheelchairs. And so people can actually go in and experience, sort of swimming, in this situation. And then you probably went into the basketball courts though, didn't you? Man, we could have concerts in there. The facility is gorgeous, and this is going to be wonderful for our therapeutic unit. I was very excited to see it. So,
And that's called Momentum?
it's called Momentum.
Oh, haven't
Yeah.
done
Well, it's brand new.
It was called United Cerebral Palsy and they just did a rebranding, rename.
Yeah.
So they changed their name a year and a half ago, or no, she said sometime between 2021 or around there, 2021.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then they've kind of refurbished this athletic club, I guess is what it was. And so they've put all of this money into it. So it's going to be like I don't know if a national headquarters or at least a California headquarters for their company. And it's right here in our backyard. So it's a really nice thing for us to have. And then I wanted to give a shout out just real quickly to Corey Pringle of our Rangers. And I'll be very brief, but I've started hiking with this group and they were all talking about these trails they adopted. And I thought, well, I think I need to adopt a trail if other people are adopting trails. And so I went on my trail and there were no signs. And Harvey and I were wondering, is this our trail? Is this our trail? We don't know if this is our trail. And I took Jim up and said, do you see any signs? And Jim had on his phone and he's looking, goes, well, no, this has to be the trail. Or is this the trail? So I was like, my trail needs to be marked. So I kind of started bugging John Noble over at Casca, very sweet man, you know, saying there's no sign on my trail. I go, there is a sign. Nope, there's no sign. And then I talked with Brian, sent him an email, and almost immediately Corey Pringle gets back to me and says, okay, we're going to go put a sign on the trail. So I go up there. He has 3 signs on that trail. Now there's no way anybody can miss that trail. In fact, part of me feels like I'm wondering if I liked it more when it was my inconspicuous trail. Now it's probably the most well-marked trail in all of the valley. But so if any of you are on kind of the eastern side of the Los Robles Trail, look for the Bobcat Trail. You can't miss it because it's very well signed at both of its entrances and in the middle to make sure you don't get off on the wrong trail. So it's a great trail, and I highly recommend the Bobcat Trail, and am very appreciative to Corey Pringle for getting right on the job and getting that trail marked.
Thank you, Ms. Cuthbert. Director Huffer.
I appreciated hearing Jim's remarks about the pickleball, because my only official meeting this past couple of weeks was the pickleball committee, which I've been a part of for almost 3 years now. So anyway, it is what it is. I did pop in briefly to the Wellness Fest. I had to come across from Canal Creek South, where we're doing the tax prep, which is the other thing. We're in the middle of training new tax preparers and retraining. I don't want to say old tax preparers because we're all old, but experienced tax preparers. So most of you on the board, except for Marissa, are of an age where you qualify for the free tax program if you wish. Jim, you're not quite there yet, but you're getting close. Anyway, that starts February 1st, or whatever the first Monday in February is for the tax program. And yeah, if you would burn that picture that you put in the recreation section, I would appreciate that. And my Hawaii grandkids are in for just a few days. We got about halfway through Andrew's list. So in 3 days, we're going to cover about 8 or 9 playgrounds. So gonna get an early start and work late. So okay. Well, that's relatively small, so we can sort of pop in and pop out of that one, right? So perfect. All right. Anyway, that's all I had to report.
Well, thank you, Director Huffer. On my left, Marissa.
Okay, so I had the pleasure of going on the field trip to the Chumash Museum with my 9-year-old, and I was really excited because I had not been to the actual museum. I realized just the park. And it's amazing. They do such a good job. The kids I was shocked like how into it they were and looking at everything, and they did a really cool little craft with them. But yeah, that was and the building is so nice. I realized that it was built when I was 12. That's why I didn't go in 3rd grade, because I was wondering about that, because I remember learning about the Chumash. But yeah, so thank you so much for saying that, because it was really amazing to go. And then other than that, I haven't done much. I did set up though, so I'm going to go to one community center a month to check it all out, to make sure I understand what's going on everywhere and meet the head program directors there. So I'm excited, and I will report back to you what I see when I'm there.
Thank you, Director Buss. Director Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Few committee meetings. I was at the California Association of Rec and Park Districts Legislative Committee meeting, and then also a pickleball ad hoc committee meeting. Was at the Wellness Fest, and also this California Rec and Park Board of Directors meeting. So those are my activities for the last 2 weeks, I guess.
Very good. We appreciate all of your involvement, and thank you for your report. I just want to start with a date as our VCSDA annual dinner meeting and elections on February 6th. So if you mark your calendar, there'll be more information coming from VCSDA on that. And it's usually a good event to interact with other board members of other special districts. I attended the MRCA board meeting, and I was reelected as chair of the MRCA for 2024. And I was unfortunately not able to attend the wellness. Someone made reservations for Judy and I at the Reagan Library at 10:30, so we had to stay with that commitment to see that exhibit because it's closing out. So I apologized to Julie, and she understood. That concludes my report. Anything else come to mind from the directors that would like to make comments on? If not, we're moving on to item 12, request for status reports and items for subsequent agendas. Everybody have it? Yes, Director Cusworth.
This is very helpful. This is very helpful for me in knowing our staff. And this is a couple years old. So could we have this redone? It should be easy to update.
Sure, we actually have that updated. We give it to every new staff member when they come on, so we can
Oh.
get that to you pretty quickly.
Yeah, I would like that. And also, do we have extra copies? I didn't get that 5-year strategic plan, the nice one that was bound. Is that in the office that I can pick up sometime? You have an extra one?
Yeah, we have copies.
Okay.
Okay, anything else, Director Cusworth?
No, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Item 13, items from the public, and we have Dale, who's still here, and you're still awake. Go ahead and go to the podium and do your thing.
First, let me just give you a quick pickleball, just one update. First, from a professional standpoint for open venues, sound barriers, I think that you'd be sorely disappointed in spending large amounts of money for almost zero performance. They usually don't work, in my professional opinion on that. The second is you're looking for sites. Conejo Creek South, there's potential site for pickleball, as well as on Jan's Road, directly across the street from the teen center. Big patch of dirt. There's hundreds of parking spots right there. Maybe you could work something out. I don't know who owns it. Maybe the school district. Maybe.
No, we tried.
Yeah, well.
Good thinking, though.
Yep. You know, but that was great. So I'd like to move on to something that is a little more near and dear to me. I used to live on Page Lane, sold that home. Now I live on St. Charles Place, right at the bend here of McLeod, bordering Botanic Garden and the community park. And we seem to have some real problems up there, and they emanate from the Botanic Garden and the community park. But the first one is your provided funds, about $35,000, I believe the amount was, in the past month, 45 days, to repave St. Charles Place. Well, it was a grossly deficient paving. You should hold that contractor accountable. I actually know about blacktop paving. I've done for other properties I've owned. I've done paving myself for actually miles of paving. They used too cold of asphalt. It didn't bind. Now it's all peeling off. It's now a hazard. People's cars are slipping in this. It is all in the concrete swale in the middle of the road as it sloughs off. And the trash trucks in particular are really tearing it up. But then as a resident / citizen, I don't know how you got away with it. You guys don't own the road. Well, you own 10% of the road, but the Oak Knoll condominiums actually is the owner. So you use public funds to pave a private road. Maybe there's an easement. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but it seems like maybe this wasn't the best plan, and maybe it isn't the best plan for the future. I've done many property lot line adjustments of land that I've owned. Maybe you should start thinking about this, because we have some other problems with this road up there. One is
the Oak Knoll condominium 9 mailboxes for those townhomes sit on your property. They are literally on your property. I have pictures of the survey marks in the road. I have one of your staff members wrote me a letter saying, yeah, they sit on CRPD land. Now, a mailbox, well, that's a federally regulated medium of exchange, commerce, mail. The next is those mailboxes aren't secure. And about 3 years ago, someone with some type of a pass key pulled up on a motorcycle, went in, started digging people's private mail out. I think mine was stolen. I've been a huge identity theft person since that time. And a neighbor confronted him with a gun. And the guy tried to run him over with the motorcycle. Now, that wasn't me. I wouldn't confront someone with a gun over a mailbox, but another neighbor did. And they're sitting on CRPD land. I could just imagine those members that are attorneys starting to think, wow, this is quite a liability. Then I have photos of it in the past month, someone jumping over the wrought iron gate at the end of St. Charles Place, which happens 7 days a week, multiple times every day, people jumping over that locked gate, usually at night. Usually they're tweakers or some whatever, but he jumped over wearing 2 machetes on his belt. And they were in these scabbards for quick cross pull. So essentially the handles were reversed. Someone doing the Indiana Jones routine. And I have photos of it. They're time dated. But it's a real mess. We have the sheriff deputies come up to the street. I had reported to your organization a meth addict that was living in the park for a full year with no action being taken. Finally, he came on to St. Charles Place completely stoned out of his mind, confronted me because I took a picture of him. That's what set him off. Called the sheriff. The sheriff brought out 4 units, including a special gang intervention, homeless addict officer. They questioned him, took him to jail. The next day, he came to my door looking for me.
He came to your door and what?
Looking for me. When he left, he went back to the park, the Botanic Garden, to go live down by the creek in there. The sheriff told me and my other neighbors that were gathered along, this is a quote, "Since the park district doesn't care about their property, go out and buy guns and use them on this guy because we don't know what he's capable of. We've arrested him 50 times. And the judges just let him out. He comes right back. But this guy is so unstable. Then a few days later, a CRPD staff member in a CRPD truck goes, hey, you want to see a nice video? The same guy beating on the truck, trying to get the CRPD, pull him out of his own truck as he's trying to escape. So we got a problem and you guys need to address it. And I don't want to be confrontational, but there's very simple solutions that cost no money to start with. One, lock your gates. Put patrol. Ask our good sheriff's deputies for help. They're the nicest, most professional law enforcement I've ever seen. They'll gladly go through there with your rangers, weed these people out, spread the word to get them out. Your staff is calling me to be their bodyguard to get people out of the Botanic Garden or the park. I don't want to be a bodyguard. I left that type of work 45 years ago. Okay, I'm not a gunslinger. All right, I may have been trained and done it, military, but I don't want to be a gunslinger.
I don't want to be your bodyguards. I don't want my home having tweakers with meth coming to my door because I turned them into the police and then they go camp in your park. There's little kids, there's the elderly, there's the disabled that use those parks every day. Please help us, or else it's going to be a huge problem. That's going to come back and be huge bad publicity in addition to injuries or massive property damage.
Time I've heard of this information, and I like to have staff make some comments on some of these previous interactions with our staff.
Yeah, I don't know exactly this person or exactly the incident. But homelessness in parks, not just this facility, but all over the entire district is certainly an issue. And we work super cooperatively with police. So we do call them and they are extremely helpful and responsive to working on issues in the park. I've actually personally been to an encampment clean out at Conejo Community and on the church property by the creek there for sure. That's actually been something, you know, I've been part of and seen. So it's the challenge, social challenge of our time, isn't it? Homelessness. So we do work cooperatively with the sheriffs and we do, you know, try to get on those issues as they arise. Absolutely.
But you have such a simple solution to do, but you don't even do it. And that's lock your gates at night. When the park is closed, lock your gates and then open them in the morning. You have the gates and you have the locks on the gates. You don't use them.
Yeah, we could get into a lot of stuff and we do talk to your HOA all the time about different things. So that's who we've been working with over the years is reps from your HOA. So appreciate, yeah, absolutely.
But the HOA has no control over your gates on the north side.
Those are the Botanic Garden gates
Right. And
that they operate.
no,
No,
no.
the Botanic,
By the playground and by the ball field, lock those gates.
do we even have gates over on that
Yes.
side?
Yes, they're okay, but they are not always.
Okay.
And so I'm sorry to say the HOA is not.
Yeah, they're our official, like, they're the property owner of our neighbor. So that's who we communicate with is the
Yeah, but
HOA.
this is, they in turn blame you. And then at the same time, these gates don't even border the HOA property. They're your gates that are on the north side of the garden and the park. You know, by the playground, the children's playground, and by the
Keeping out the homeless person, the gates will?
that it's going to help. Well, Jim,
Okay.
if you don't have an attitude of you got to try,
We've been in
then
it
why
so
do you-
many times over the years, Dale.
I know, but you got to keep trying. But what's going to
Okay.
happen when one of us is hurt? Then you're going to have a smug attitude and that's going to be used
Sir,
against the
You
CRPD.
have crossed so many lines over the years, sir. And honestly, that's why we work with your HOA and that's why we communicate with them. So we appreciate you living with them, but they're the rep of that whole entire complex. So that's who we kind of work out stuff with. That's our neighbor. That's who we work with.
But they're not involved.
So they're the property owner.
But they're not involved. You have people coming through that park that are actually going onto McLeod that because there is a nice, I don't know, 6.5 foot wrought iron fence, but they hug that wrought iron fence and then they go into that apartment complex or apartment complexes that are on McLeod. So they're bypassing. I know you guys, I know you in particular, you hate my guts. Okay. I know you do. And I don't care. You know, I'm just trying to bring a problem before it becomes a huge problem for us. But you have people that are going after kids on the same walkway. They're not stepping a foot onto the HOA property, but they're coming from your parks and they're camping overnight, doing drugs, doing liquor, and now they have weapons in an attack mode.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's rough, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, issues.
Dale, appreciate your sharing this information, and I know staff will be addressing some of these issues, and we'll see what we can do to alleviate the issues of concern. And thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item 14, executive closed sessions. Do we have a need for a closed session this evening?
Nope.
Okay, with that, we're going to adjourn. And as we know, we have an emergency, a special meeting coming up, the first part of February. And no, it's the end of, it's the 30th of January, excuse me. I was thinking of the BCSDA at the same time. Okay, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your contributions.